Welcome, Mahesh. Thank you for joining. Um, so, yes,
Hey, Hemant.
Mahesh.
Good
Right.
evening.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, I was just giving a brief context to this room. So, last week we did kind of an introduction to Savitri for people who are who have just heard of Savitri and don't know much about it. And many people expressed interest to kind of continue delving into it and perhaps read Savitri and talk about the legend and the symbol. And Mahesh has kindly obliged to take us forward on that journey. So today it's entirely to you, floor is to you, Mahesh. Um, to take us through Savitri. And then at a point where you think we've kind of had a logical pause, we can pause and open up for discussion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sounds good, Hemant.
okay. So over to you, Mahesh.
Yeah. Thank you, Hemant. Okay. Hello, all. Apologies up front. I do not know many of you by name or face or whatever. Maybe we should do a Zoom session or something so that I can attach a face on the name. So, greetings to you all. So, today, what I wanted to do was uh, not to take a very, how do I put it, a very structured way of looking at Savitri, but rather to be like little children who are going and feeling up this monster, right? We just go put our hands around and see what this beast is all about. That's the sort of approach I wanted to take. Now, before we do that, as with any venture, when we begin any venture. In the Hindu tradition, it's always a norm that we do invocatory verse, right? We do a invocation to Ganesha, saying assist us in our journeys, right? Now, I'd like to do something different, a little different. Invariably goes to Ganesha somehow, and to some aspect of the divine. But I'd like to read out uh, another poem, a small poem, a short poem of Sri Aurobindo, which I found to be very profound, meaningful. Many of you might have heard of it. The poem is called Invitation. And I think this particular session is like a little invitation for all of us to go touch the word body of Savitri, right? So that is Sri Aurobindo's poem. Now, a little bit of context. This was, you might find it a little, how do I put it, very martial in its tone a little bit. That's because this was written in Alipur jail period. So you'll find some of that fire still sort of lingering here. So let me just read out that short poem for you, Invitation. With wind and the weather beating round me, up to the hill and the moorland I go. Who will come with me? Who will climb with me? Wade through the brook and tramp through the snow? Not in the petty circle of cities, cramped by your doors and your walls I dwell. Over me, God is blue in the welkin. Against me, the wind and the storm rebel. I sport with solitude here in my regions. Of misadventure have made me a friend. Who would live largely? Who would live freely? Here to the windswept uplands ascend. And the Lord of tempest and mountain, and the spirit of freedom and pride. Stark must he be, and a kinsman to danger, who shares my kingdom and walks at my side.
Wow,
So
theory.
that is invitation. I would like to think of it as Sri Aurobindo inviting all of us to to undertake this little journey. And uh, I find it very symbolic, right? This poem itself, because I've probably read it many hundreds and hundreds of times. Whenever each one of us, we face our sphinxes, we face our mazes, and so on in life. And we find that the quest that we began with, often doesn't go in the direction that we need it to. So at each one of those times, it's helpful to remind ourselves to sort of catch the thread again and go back. And so it is with Savitri, right? Because there is much in us, much in me, much in you that would oppose, whether it's external circumstance or whether it's an internal configuration, your context, right? Your emotional poise, your mental openness, whether your aesthetic being is ready to receive all that is being given. There are 100 variables here, none of which we control, right? So if you look at what you're right, sport with solitude here in my regions of misadventure have made me a friend. And all the qualities that he exhorts you to have, he's asking you, right? Can you live largely? Can you live freely? You know, he says, you'll have to do some heavy duty following through very difficult terrain. So, uh, much like a physical terrain, he's using a mountain and a hill sort of symbol here. And Savitri is no less a brutal endeavor. You have to follow it, right? You're talking about some of the most, what do you say, most complex, most profound inner journeys and outer journeys that what one could undertake wearing a human form. That is what Savitri is going to give all of us. And yeah, it's ideal to be stark and just follow wherever he's leading you. With that, let's pick Savitri. So I'm using my version, like I said, this is the revised edition. I think it's still the edition that's floating around. First edition 1951, fourth revised edition 1993. We'll try to make this a little easier, perhaps, because if it were a video session, then I could show you, which particular passage we are reading. But for now, I think we'll keep it organic and just go with the flow. I'll just read out from my particular version. Um, if there are, how do I put it? If there's any other way, please let me know where we could do some, coordinated reading. So I'm pick the book right now. Now let me begin by reading the author's note. Now this is in Sri Aurobindo's hand itself. So he writes this little author note. We touched upon this briefly last week, but let's sort of read it in full. Author's note. The tale of Satyavan and Savitri is recited in the Mahabharata as a story of conjugal love conquering death. But this legend is, as shown by many features of the human tale, one of the many symbolic myths of the Vedic cycle. Satyavan is the soul carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance. Savitri is the divine word, daughter of the sun, goddess of the supreme truth, who comes down and is born to save. Ashwapati, the lord of the horse, her human father, is the lord of tapasya, the concentrated energy of spiritual endeavor that helps us to rise from the mortal to the immortal planes. Yuvatsena, lord of the shining hosts, father of Satyavan, is the divine mind, here fallen blind, losing its celestial kingdom of vision, and through that loss, its kingdom of glory. Still, this is not a mere allegory. The characters are not personified qualities, but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces with whom we can enter into concrete touch, and they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way from his mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life. Now that's the author's note. Now, a couple of points here, right? I just want to dwell upon momentarily. Now, when Sri Aurobindo says, this is not a mere allegory, the characters are not personified qualities. You know, personified qualities, but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces. Now, these are forces with a capital F. So, these are the tidal forces, right? Like gravity, right? It's these are the tidal forces at the very highest levels. And he says that these forces take a personality, take a form, and he's making it a point to note that you could get in touch with them, right? You could make a contact with them and receive their aid in moving from the current condition of ignorance and incapacity, death, to something that is more luminous, more longer lasting, and perhaps immortal, right? And uh, how do I put it? So when he says that these are conscious forces, it would be best to take it, attach the same value that he's attaching to it. And let us begin with that sort of an aspiration when we're sort of looking at Savitri. Now, Savitri's structure, I just want to spend a little, a few minutes on the structure of Savitri. Now, like I had mentioned in our last session, Sri Aurobindo, uh, he's extremely modern in his outlook in terms of how sadhana ought to be practiced, how he's looking at the world, and the way he's sort of manifesting his works, right, is extremely modern in his worldview. Now, the reason I make this point is because it is when we speak of poetry, especially mantric poetry, it is not often that you come across mantric poetry in English, right? You get good poetry, of course. You have Shakespeare. It's like a little demigod sitting there, right? Extraordinary poetry, but not mantric poetry. Now, why do we say that? Because mantric poetry, for those of you who are familiar with any of the Sanskrit mantras, you will know, and not just familiar in terms of knowing the mantra by memory or whatever. I don't mean that. But if you have had the experience of the mantra lighting up in you, when I say lighting up, it sort of comes out of your own being. You know how to experience this. The mantra has come alive, it has manifested some of its quality into you, and to the extent of your capacity to be able to receive it, harmonize it within your being, you find that you are sort of elevated, you gain new qualities, new faculties, even sometimes, many times. So that sort of a mantric poetry, but done in English. Now, and he's doing it very consciously, right? He's writing it to be an experiment in poetry to see how far human language could be taken, but he's already breaking the mold because he's writing this thing in English, right? And uh, that's another big aspect that we need to sort of be cognizant of. Uh, Now, wanted to make this point about mantric poetry because though he's sort of modern in how he's sort of manifesting this particular work, it he retains this connection to much of it, much of the many other attempts at writing, spiritual poetry. He's sort of maintaining a thread there. Now, why do I make this point? Making this point because when someone writes a Purana, for example, a Purana is supposed to have certain qualities, some lakshana, right? It's supposed to have certain qualities to be classified as a Purana. And one of those qualities is, one of those aspects, facets, is that the Purana needs to speak of the origin of the world, origin of creation. You begin at the beginning, right? That's what it's supposed to do. Now you find that Sri Aurobindo follows that structure loosely. He's not strictly sticking to that form, but there is something about that form where you begin at the beginning, and we sort of alluded to it very briefly in our last session. You will find this in most epic poets. Whenever an epic poet is sort of beginning his work, his or her work, you will find that they start at the start, they go to the root. They go to the root of the matter, right? I mean, Homer does it because Homer does it in his Odyssey by asking the muse to come and support him, right? Because that's the start for him, right? That's the start of the work. Now, that's what a Purana, how that's how Purana has to be structured, and you find that Sri Aurobindo is beginning Savitri with a similar structure. So if you look at it, the very first book in part one, book one, canto one, the book one is called the Book of Beginnings. So his beginning, is going right at the start. That's what we're going to sort of read through briefly today. On the structure, there are three books. Book one, two. Oh, sorry. There are 12 books. There are three parts. Parts one, two, and three. Uh, now, like Hemant was mentioning, around 24,000 lines, largest poem in the world. Not that it's a big deal, we're not here for that aspect. So, the Book of Beginning, that's what we're going to start with. Let me just go there. Okay. Something interesting is here, right? Now, he says the Book of Beginnings, right? Beginnings. It's not a single beginning, there are multiple beginnings. Now we'll get to that in just a moment. But the Canto 1, the title of Canto 1 is a very interesting title again. He calls it the Symbol Dawn. Right? Now let's begin, and then we'll just sort of we'll get to a logical endpoint, and then we'll run through each one of the lines. Book 1, Savitri. Book 1, Canto 1, the Symbol Dawn. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge, foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence's marge. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of a rayless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world, a power of fallen, boundless self awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. As in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, longing forever the unseen will, cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulous whirl. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, its formless stupor without mind or life, a shadow spinning through a soulless void, thrown back once more into unthinking dreams, earth wheeled, abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. The impassive skies were neutral, empty, still. Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless movement, an unthought idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without a name, something that wished but knew not how to be, teased the inconscient to wake ignorance. I'll pause there a moment, right? I'll pause here and let's sort of dig into dig into this particular passage that we just read. Now, the book of beginnings, right? The very first line hits us with its sort of quaintness. It's a very odd line. It was the hour before the gods awake, right? Uh, Not past tense. Uh, he's not sort of recollecting a event that has occurred before. He's talking about this event as if it's sort of happening now. He's sort of describing it, right? So from a from a how do I put it? From an inner perspective, he is talking about he's sort of positing himself above time, so to speak, and you're looking at that particular moment before creation has come to be. That's the condition that he's sort of describing, right? Uh, Across the path of the divine event, the huge, foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity. Now, a couple of different things. Now, we are used to looking at night as the repository of all that is bad, right? All that is bad. But Sri Aurobindo is using the term in her unlit temple of eternity. So, night itself has a temple. There is a infinity attached to that darkness, that negation, right? Uh, and it is in that temple that the divine, the night is sort of waiting and watching. It's the existence. Now, why are we sort of looking at this particular aspect very clearly? Because usually, whenever we, as aspirants, right, whenever we look at something that is not made of light or explicitly divine or good or beneficial, our immediate reaction is to shrink to it. Now, uh, but the shrinking, the struggle, for those of you who are familiar with the Kali aspect, will know that though Kali has a what do you say, violent moods, or to put it mildly. But these moods are all beneficial moods. They are beneficial violence. She's sort of removing your impediments and things like that. So it's that sort of a higher sort of night. This is not the night where you have this very Bollywood portrayal of Rakshasas with very poor dental hygiene laughing away. It's not that night. This night is slightly more profound. It's the black womb, as the Veda sort of alludes to it many times. Uh, in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence's marge. Right? Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable. In the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. So this particular condition, this particular phenomena that he is expressing, what is he looking at? What is Sri Aurobindo shooting for? Now here, it's because it was we are going right to the beginning, right? We are going back into the origin of all things. Think of this like the moment before the Big Bang. That is what he's describing in there, right? So all that you have, every description that you have is that utter negation raised to its sort of zenith. So you have the superconscient, like we mentioned in our last session. Superconscient is your Satchidananda, Supreme Brahman, all bright, everything is glorious, etc., etc. And at the very opposite end of that spectrum, the very polar opposite is your inconscient. Inconscient is the sort of negation of everything. Now, you will find that Sri Aurobindo returns to this inconscient again and again, many, many times, because though we know of it as the utter night, it's the utter negation, there are other things that are happening there, right? Which the Vedic rishis discovered first, and I mean, post the Vedic rishis, very few people even sort of ventured into those particular realms. And but Sri Aurobindo speaks about it because he speaks about it in rather sort of very grueling level of detail, right? So he gets into it very, very heavily. So we'll visit that separately. I mean, if we continue on Savitri, we'll be touching on all of those aspects also. But that is the condition that he's describing here. Uh, uh, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world. So think of the void, Anything that you can remove from there, still remove everything. It's that sort of a poise of consciousness that's sort of, being alluded to here, right? But there's another interesting thing that's happening here. A part of fallen, boundless self awake, right? Think through that one, right? The self is, the divine self. Now the question arises in our mind: this boundless self has fallen. Why has it fallen? Now, where did it fall from? Right? What is the condition? What sort of necessitated that fall? Right? Now, I'm going to leave these questions with you. There are things that we will describe. There are things, that I would much rather let it sort of bounce around in your mind and heart for you to dwell upon, because each one of these lines, each one of these ideas are the sort of uh, net that can catch you and fling you into a particular understanding, whether it's something that's revealed to you mentally or you're flung into some other aspect of, the infinite layers of experiences that are there. These are the lines that you have to sort of watch with your mind's eye. Right? Power of fallen, boundless self awake between the first and the last nothingness. Now, this particular line, between the first and the last nothingness. Now, again, you see that oddity recurring, right? So, first of all, he calls it the book of beginnings. And then, so there's an implication of multiple beginnings. And now he's talking about the sense of a first and last nothingness. Now, people have looked at this particular line in many, many ways. But the way I look at it personally is in the sense of the yuga cycles that recur, right? There is this ascending spiral, so to speak, right? That's how Sri Aurobindo speaks of it, right? The ascending spirals. So it's almost like a spring. So you have this upward curve, which is sort of revolving and keeping going up, right? Now, this ascending spiral is the spiral of life evolving from uh, the material base into higher and higher poises of consciousness. So, from water, the whatever life forms that come from water, then they come to land and animal, and then man evolves out. So life sort of evolves into more higher and higher complex forms of consciousness. Everything is imminent and is sort of coming out, right? Now, this yuga cycles is not just a mere allusion to the cycle of yugas that's mentioned so frequently in the Hindu literature. Yeah, this is so common for us. For those of you who are not familiar, there is no single Big Bang, and then everything goes to dissolution, and then boom, everything is gone. There is nothing like that. The sages speak of these cycles recurring again and again in a little cycle. So there is a burst into creation. So life takes a certain form, it moves into a certain distance, and then it sort of absorbs back. It goes back into, I don't know, the black hole, or into the mind of Brahma. It vanishes, right? It vanishes, and then it sort of comes out again. Now, when Sri Aurobindo is referring to between the first and last nothingness, I like to think of it as the pralayas that went before. The very first pralaya and then the next pralaya. The cycles of creation are going on infinitely forever. They are sort of never ending, right? Uh, Recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came. This is another extremely interesting line, because there is this power, of this boundless self. It hasn't yet individualized itself. It hasn't, given itself a being. But somewhere it's remembering, right? And it's recollecting. The tenebrous womb from which it came turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality and longed to reach its end and vacant not. Now this is such a difficult, painful line to read if you think about it, right? So if you were to sort of put yourself in that particular spot, saying if you were that person that power, you're sort of waking up in this void, and the first thing that you're feeling is first thing that you're remembering is the womb, the tenebrous womb from which you came, and that sheer load, the weight of that burden, right? The sheer burden, right? Turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and long to reach its end and vacant not. Such a profound and beautiful line. But at the very moment of awakening, it's sort of feeling that entire pain. It knows, the process, the painful process of birth, the painful process of life. And for those of us with the work life, it's like that Monday morning blues, right? You wake up and you want the whole damn thing to end, right? Something similar, but at a much, much larger scale, obviously, right? And long to reach its end and vacant not. So he pauses there, and then he goes on to say, as in a dark beginning of all things, as in a dark beginning of all things, a mute, featureless semblance of the unknown, repeating forever the unconscious act, prolonging forever the unseen will, right? Now, for those of you whose being is sort of developed, especially if you're active in the manas planes, right? In the mind planes, or in the vital planes. This might be a very difficult uh, line to sort of relate to, right? But again, for those of you who have some experience of the integral yoga, apart from the ascension process, once the descent happens, and once the descent starts touching your layers, let's say below the heart center, or even lower, right? Below the heart center, once the descent has sort of proceeded that far, you'll be very familiar. You'll become very familiar because this level of tamas is a word that we can sort of understand. This level of absolute inactivity. There is. It's almost as if you feel the stones lethargy, right? Uh, it's alive, it's there, but it's mute, incapable, repeating forever the unconscious act. The stone is just there, prolonging forever the unseen will. There is a will, but doesn't know what, it doesn't do anything, it's just sitting there. And it's a horrific condition. Uh, but that, and of course, multiplied a million times, right, is the sort of condition that he's describing here. Cradled the cosmic drowse of ignorant force, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns and carries our lives in its somnambulist world. Right? Now, it's cradling the cosmic drowse. You can imagine this force, right? It's asleep, or half asleep, barely awake. It's sort of coming out uh, from its cosmic sleep, and uh, it is still ignorant. So it's force with a capital F, but it is still an ignorant force. It doesn't know what. It has the power. It has the power. It most certainly has power, but it doesn't know the purpose or the end or how, what, but it can do things, right? And that's why he goes on to remind us, whose moved creative slumber kindles the suns. Yeah, the power that lights up the sun and all your stars is present with that force, but it's asleep. It's sort of stirring, right? And carries our lives in its somnambulist whirl. Right. Athwart the vain, enormous trance of space, right? Trance of space, enormous trance of space. Right? It's formless stupor without a mind or life. None of these have yet come to be, right? There's no mind, no life, and and the trance of space. I want you to sort of think about it, mull about that particular aspect, right? Trance of space. A shadow spinning through a soulless void. Soulless void. Thrown back once more into unthinking dreams. Earth wheeled, abandoned in the hollow gulfs, forgetful of her spirit and her fate. The impassive skies were neutral, empty, still. Now, up until this particular point, we are Sri Aurobindo is just describing the the moment, the point before which the actual event of sort of life manifesting is sort of happening, right? He's there at that particular point. Now he's brought us this far. He has described all that condition, and now the there's something beginning. Now look at this. Then it says, then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless movement, an unthought idea. Movement. We don't even know. We can't even give it, we don't even know what it is, right? But something is stirring. It's like a little germ that sort of awakened in that consciousness, in that fallen consciousness. In that night, there is something that sort of woken up, insistent, dissatisfied, without an aim, something that wished but knew not how to be. Tease the inconscient to wake ignorance. Now, this is a profound, profound line. This is what I was sort of pointing to when we said, night is not your typical night with, Rakshasas with bad dental hygiene, laughing badly. It's not that night. This condition, the inconscience that he's describing, is something much more foundational, right? Much more foundational upon which existence stands. So, like I said, remember superconscient, then at the other end, the inconscient. Now, this particular force, which was drowsy, sleepy, something is stirred, and this is going and taunting the inconscient to wake ignorance. Now, even ignorance has not been born. Forget knowledge. Knowledge is very far, as it, right? Even ignorance is not born. So you're looking at a condition which is negation of anything that you can think of. To use the very nice Upanishadic way of looking at it, right? The way to describe the Brahman, the Upanishad uses the negating terms neti neti, right? Similarly, right? If you take the same neti neti and sort of apply it to denial of uh, um, anything that might constitute as a being or becoming anything, right? Now you apply it, then you arrive at the same result. Maybe anything, not this. It's none of these things. It's the inconscient. It's the other side. Now, the inconscient is being teased, saying, now wake up, ignorance, now. You know. Okay. Now, that attempt, now imagine this state of negation, this state of, sleep or void or emptiness is so complete that a throw that came and left a quivering trace gave room for an old, tired want unfilled, at peace in its subconscient moonless cave to raise its head and look for absent light, straining closed eyes of vanished memory, like one who searches for a bygone self and only meets the corpse of his desire. Uh, Such a glorious description of this really abstract, really profound process that's happening, right? Now, again, for those of you sadhaks who have sort of proceeded a little distance, you'll know that there are times where a higher inspiration comes, or you have had a certain realization, but your own condition is so full of tamas that it sort of passes through you. You've had the experience. There is it's like a little meteor, right? That's sort of flashing through you. It flashed. You could see so much more in that little moment, and now it's gone. It's not there. Now you wonder, is it me? Or was it the same person who underwent that experience? Similar thing, but on a supracosmic scale, right? So a throw that came and left a quivering trace, that teasing the inconscient to wake ignorance, that itch, that little urge, it came and it left a trail, like a little meteor in the emptiness of space. And what did that trace do? That trace that quivered and just left. He says it gave room for an old, tired want unfilled. Old. It's again. Remember, he's sort of again alluding to the cycles again, right? This process of creation has happened many times before, and there was something that it had to find, but it could not find. So dissolution had to happen, and then it had to renew its attempt, right? uh, it had to renew its attempt. And you will find Sri Aurobindo linking this in a sense of beginning again, but again, to allude, this is not very different from once you go into sleep and you come back and it's another attempt at life, right? That's your attempt, right? And a old, tired one because you sort of remember. But look at the way he's dealing with it, right? Gave room for a old, tired want unfilled, a piece in its subconscient moonless cave, to raise its head and look for absent light. Now, remember, he said, wake ignorance up. Now, and ignorance is woken, so to speak, has been woken up. And with ignorance and dreams, then the whole subconscious aspect, right, that has sort of come into being already, right? So again, look at the way he's alluding to it. At peace in its subconscient moonless cave. Now, the moonless cave is not a mere symbol because uh, moon is typically a symbol of the human mind. There's some mind principle, any mind principle in its various states of illumination is represented by the moon in the various spiritual traditions. So anytime you see the moon, in any one of its forms, it could be, the scythe-shaped moon that Shiva is sort of wearing on his head, or how do I put it? In any number of the goddess Abhirami has a nose ring, again in the shape of a moon, a nose ring in the shape of a moon. So anytime you see this moon symbol, it is speaking about, it's sort of hinting at the mind and its various states of illumination. Now, by mind, it's not necessarily the mind of man as you and I know it, that we are most familiar with. This is the mind principle, manas, which is involved in matter, which is involved in life, and sort of comes into its own in the mind principle of man. It sort of grows up. It was immanent, it was behind the scenes all along in matter, and of course in subconscient and in the inconscient. It's there, it's all there, and it slowly sort of comes out. That's the evolutionary idea that Sri Aurobindo puts forth. I say nothing has come from outside; it's all inside, and it's each one of these layers that sort of peeling out. Now, this is not exclusively Sri Aurobindo's idea. He takes it to a different level, but this notion of the immanent coming out is there since the Vedic times, since the Upanishadic times. So this is not a new idea that he's bringing forth, but of course he does something different with it, right? And we'll get to that separately. To raise its head and look for absent light, straining closed eyes of vanished memory. That's a beautiful line. Yeah, this is there was a faculty called memory. It's sort of gone now, and that faculty, poetically speaking, it's sort of straining its eyes of vanished memory, uh, uh, like one who searches for a bygone self and only meets the corpse of his desire. Right? I mean, this again very easily you could relate to, especially if you're slightly uh, on the older side of the human life spectrum. You were not who you are, not you who you were before. Right? That guy is long gone. long gone, especially if you have had any significant spiritual experiences. It's so painfully evident that the things that you call yourself, it's uh, that is something has come and shattered it. It's no longer there. How much ever you wish it, right? It's just gone. It's that, like one who searches for a bygone self, whether it's inside or it could be another person also, but only meets the corpse of his desire. Life evolves. Some things change. So that's how this vanished memory is sort of looking at it, right? It says, where is this, right? But nothing is there. Okay. It was as though even in this not profound, even in this ultimate dissolution's core, there lurked an unremembering entity, survivor of a slain and buried past, condemned to resume the effort and the pang, reviving in another frustrate world. Again, same idea, right? So even in this dissolution score, there lurked an unremembering entity, survivor of a slain and buried past, condemned to resume the effort and the pang. Again, that sense of that enormous burden and this cycle that has to repeat again and again and again in our creation cycles, right? The cycles of life, uh, painful, right? And it is so he says that even in this ultimate dissolution score, even in this not profound, there is an entity that is not remembering the details. But it's the survivor of attempts that have happened in the past, right? And it's not only the survivor, but it also sort of has that sense of being, slain and buried, and it knows that the yoke is there. Now, another beautiful way to sort of to relate or feel this line is if you look at many of the uh, Greek myths, right? Again, I really hate to use the word mythology, by the way, because it reveals a very profound ignorance of what the mythology is meant for. Uh, so I'll maybe if I use it unconsciously, please correct me. If you look at any of the Greek traditions, right, and you would find this the symbol of the rock being Prometheus, right, of the rock being moved up the mountain. Go to the mountain again, sort of push back, repeat the exercise again and again. The sheer burden, the enormous futility. And of course, in the Greek story, it comes as a cautionary parable, right? It's like a little cautionary tale saying, don't mess around with the gods, right? But here it's a little different. Again, you'll sort of see this difference, but it's that repeated effort, condemned to resume the effort and the pang, reviving in another frustrate world. An unshaped consciousness desired light. Now, watch this. An unshaped consciousness desired light, and a blank prescience yearned towards distant change. Right? Something is beginning to long, right? It felt the burden first. It's trying to see what was there. Nothing is there. Everything is gone, and now is the birth of you want to call it desire or aspiration. Something is longing for it. It says an unshaped consciousness. It's not yet precisely formed that it can ask for things in a precise fashion, like us most of the times, but not always. An unshaped consciousness desired light, and a blank prescience yearned towards distant change. So you already see the birth of that aspiration, right? Something is not enough in that consciousness. It says, I need to become something else. Yeah, something has to change here, right? Towards distant change. As if a childlike finger laid on a cheek reminded of the endless need in things, the heedless mother of the universe. An infant longing clutched the somber vast. I mean, this just extraordinary line, right? As if a childlike finger laid on a cheek reminded of the endless need in things, the heedless mother of the universe. An infant longing clutched the somber vast. And it's glorious. Infant longing clutched the somber vast. So you can imagine this, right? Vast, personified. It's a sort of somber. Everything is silent. There's no place for pity, compassion, nothing, right? But there is this longing that's been just born. It's still an infant. It's a baby. It doesn't know a damn thing, right? And this infant longing clutched the somber vast, right? And what's the next movement? Insensibly, somewhere a breach began. Insensibly, somewhere a breach began. A long, lone line of hesitating hue, like a vague smile tempting a desert heart, troubled the far rim of life's obscure sleep. Again, a glorious description of the process. Troubled the far rim of life's obscure sleep. And now remember, the subconscient sort of entered the picture. Now life is entering the picture now, but life is not awake. Even life is sort of dead, asleep, right? Uh, uh, and this sleep is not like our sleep. It's a much more negated sleep. There's absolutely nothing. Everything is blotted out, right? So it's life is in this particular condition, and the far rim of life's outside sleep is sort of something is going and poking it, it's caressing it, saying waking it up, right? Like a vague smile tempting a desert heart, a long, lone line of hesitating hue, like a vague smile tempting a desert heart, troubled the far rim of life's obscure sleep, arrived from the other side of boundlessness, an eye of deity peered through the dumb deeps. Yeah. You are already in boundlessness. Now he's speaking of, this is like the description of the Paratpara Purusha, right? The transcendent, the one who transcends everything, space, time, all of the manifestation, as we like to think of it, with all its many infinities, etc., all the scheme of worlds, apart from all of that. And you have this really beautiful uh, I mean, if it's difficult to imagine the transcendent, right? There is this really beautiful image of Vishnu, the way Vishnu is portrayed, right, in the Puranas, especially, right? The way Vishnu is portrayed. Vishnu is always portrayed as there is this uh, ocean of milk, right? As in the nourishing principle. There's this ocean of milk, and above it there is Ananta, who's Ananta is the name of the snake. And if you look at the name Ananta, infinity, right? There is Ananta who's making a sort of bed, and atop that bed is Vishnu reclining, sleeping, rather, right? Reclining and he's sleeping, and it's that idea. So you have infinity, and then Vishnu sort of being on top, and he's asleep. He's not consciously looking at anything, right? He's asleep. Now that's the idea. So you have these sort of waters floating around, and then the transcendent, which sort of exceeds everything. It's above all. Now that's your arrived from the other side of boundlessness. An eye of deity peered through the dumb deeps. Right? Now is the entrance, in response to that call, something that wanted a change. In response to that aspiration, that call, you know, something beyond the boundlessness in which this entire event is sort of occurring, the eye of deity comes down and sort of peers down. It takes a look, right? There's this intervention, there's this response, answer that's sort of coming through, right? An eye of deity peered through the dumb deeps. A scout in a reconnaissance from the sun, it seemed amid a heavy cosmic rest, the torpor of a sick and weary world, to seek for a spirit soul and desolate, to fallen to recollect forgotten bliss. The eye of deity that's peering, it's a scout in a reconnaissance from the sun, right? So now we have all the primary principles that have sort of come into play. This eye of deity, it ought to come from somewhere, right? And this your There's not your physical sun, there's your spiritual sun, right? Like the supreme sun, the Savitri, for example. Right? Now that is coming down, and the torpor of a sick and weary world, right? To seek for a spirit soul and desolate, too fallen to recollect forgotten bliss. Intervening in a mindless universe, its message crept through the reluctant hush, calling the adventure of consciousness and joy, and conquering nature's dissolution breast, compelled renewed consent to see and feel. It's there's no mind, life is asleep, something is woken up, the eye of deity has come in, our little scout from the sun, that sort of made entry, and it's sort of sending its message, right? And this message is sort of, you look at that line, and even that message, the way it grows, it's such a apt description. It crept through the reluctant hush, right? It's not sort of rushing swiftly like the ray of the sun, right? That goes everywhere, right? In the blink of an eye. No, this thing is reluctant because remember, all this is still, you're still in the play of the inconscient. It's in that context that all of this is occurring. Inconscient and subconscient. All the tamas, all the darkness, and through that reluctant hush, this message is going. And what is the message? Calling the adventure of consciousness and joy. Yeah. So and conquering nature's dissolution risk. Nature's already had enough. She knows this attempt. She knows this process. She's done this a million times before. So yeah, she knows. Yeah, the climb will be terminated someday. Pralaya dissolution will come again, and obviously she's not very happy about it. And if in a small human life, if you can think of the disappointments that you feel, and you feel very disillusioned, now imagine how nature ought to feel, right? Because she not only knows this thing in painful detail, all the labors that she has to undergo, to birth life and man and animal and everything. And she has done this many, many times, right? So her disappointment is on a different level, right? But compelled renewed consent to see and feel. So, life has to wake up. It has to see and feel. It has to sort of begin that cycle. It has to begin. So yet now again, watch. Nothing is being imposed. I'm not saying bloody hell, wake up now and begin. Boom, go. Right? No, there is a consent. Right? Compelled, renewed consent to see and feel. A thought was sown in the unsounded void. A sense was born within the darkness's depths. A memory quivered in the heart of time, as if a soul long dead were moved to live. Again, compelled renewed consent to see and feel. A thought was sown in the unsounded void. Void, unsounded. A thought was sown, and a sense was born. Because the moment you say thought, then something has to think, feel, etc. A memory quivered in the heart of time. Right? Deep in time, a memory. Now this memory is born, so to speak. Right? As if a soul long dead. Because remember, dissolution, right? Slain, and it's sort of beginning. The attempt is made to begin, and time is brought into play. Memory is brought into play, and it's you're saying wake up now. Life has to happen. Right? But the oblivion that succeeds the fall had blotted the crowded tablets of the past, and all that was destroyed must be rebuilt, an old experience labored out once more. The oblivion that succeeds the fall, right, had blotted the crowded tablets of the past, all the memory, all that you have accomplished, etc., etc., everything that has been done, everything is vanished. It's gone, right? It's gone. It's blotted out. But all that was destroyed, everything that was scuttled out, has to be rebuilt, right? It has to be attempted again. It has to be rebuilt, and all the old experience that you've had, it has to be relived. once more. It has to be God. Now, this again, remember again what we said in the beginning, right? In the book of beginnings, there are many layers of these beginnings. The Yuga cycles is one level of beginning. There's the impersonal birth of these cosmic forces that are sort of coming into play from the negation or the fallen state of the inconscience, right? From the previous attempt, whatever has happened, uh, now it's sort of waking up, again for this attempt at manifestation, attempt at life, everything, right? Now there is you see this progressive increase of the number of faculties of consciousness that are coming into play in the way Sri Aurobindo was describing it, right? There was absolutely nothing. We began with opaque, impenetrable, unbodied infinite, everything. Now, from there, one by one, it's like the unfolding, right? Things are unfolding now. The subconscious came up, then memory came in. There was this little urge that came. There was this call that was born. In response, there was this reconnaissance. There was the scout from the sun, and then the eye of deity peering, and then that message sort of goes, saying, let's give me consent to attempt life, to feel everything. Come, let's start again. Then there is this awareness that's being born, only meeting its dead past, right? And it feels the burden, the pain, the difficulty, and now we have come to a time where uh, that you ought to go rebuild everything. Everything has to be rebuilt. Everything has to be re-experienced, and it's a difficult endeavor. Now, this is at a supracosmic, extracosmic scale, right? You're looking at a supremely difficult endeavor, even for nature, who's infinite in a manifestation, Prakriti, Shakti, however you want to call it, right? Uh, but look at this line and the next line, right? All can be done if the God touches there. That one line. How on one side you have this void, there is this impossible endeavor, just impossible endeavor to start from scratch. Right? That's literally start from scratch from the void, right? From the void, from inconscience. And he ends that section with that particular line: all can be done if the God touches there. Right? Somewhere there is already the entry of this scout from the sun, right? That's already happened. The deity has already appeared, and you know somewhere the answer has come, but he's sort of closing that section with his emphasis that it is a near impossible endeavor, but can be done. Now, how can it be done? It can be done if the God touches there. Right? Now, there is a beautiful aphorism. I'm just going to paraphrase it for you from Sri Aurobindo. Uh, uh, so forgive me if I get the words wrong, right? Uh, uh, a moment, let me just recollect it. Because this temporal universe was a paradox, therefore the eternal created it out of his being. That's part of the aphorism. I find it almost funny, right? Uh, because this temporal universe. Now, why is this temporal universe a paradox? Paradox because the divine, who's atemporal, he's ananta, infinite. He's beyond time, right? So for him to do something as silly as time would be a paradox, saying, how could eternity create something down like mortality? Because it's a paradox. I can't do, I'm eternal. I'm not supposed to do perishable things, because it's a paradox. And because it's a paradox, the divine says, why the heck not? I'll do it because I'm the eternal. So, uh, I always found it funny ever since the first time I read it. It was like a joke on us, but it's still funny. So that's the sort of line. All can be done if the God touches there. Right? A hope stole in that hardly dare to be amid the night's forlorn indifference. Right? But night's forlorn indifference. Night doesn't give a damn. Inconscient night, right? It's not bothered. But something has stirred, something has had to be. But the interesting thing, just like the way the scout came down from the sun and the eye of the deity appeared, now there is a new element, there is a new entrant into this drama, right? So though the night doesn't care, by and large, hope has made its entry. Okay, as if solicited in an alien world with timid and hazardous instinctive grace, orphaned and driven out to seek a home, an errant marvel with no place to live, into a far off nook of heaven there came a slow, miraculous gesture's dim appeal. Again, a glorious description of the process, right? Glorious description. The entry of hope and as if solicited in an alien world, right? As if solicited in an alien world. Now, again, the parallel to us as sort of sadhaks, right? When you look at this line, is think of, uh, try to remember I mean, if you can, that period before the divine made an entry. That's the alien world, right? Before the divine makes an entry into your life, that's the alien world. Something is stealing in, right? Now it's in that alien world, right? Orphaned and driven out to seek a home, an errant marvel with no place to live, right? With no place to live. Into a far off nook of heaven there came a slow, miraculous gestures, dim appeal. A slow, miraculous gestures, dim appeal. Difficult condition, something is penetrating and sort of, making its entry, it's pushing its way through. Right. Now, uh, one second, let me see. Hemant, I think we'll sort of pause there and uh, because this section is a really big
Yeah,
section.
yeah. No, no, certainly. I think we can pause there. You've been
Yeah.
speaking continuously for over an hour now.
Oops.
So,
Okay.
oh my goodness, it was absolutely beautiful. There was the journey through Vedas and Puranas. You see that Aurobindo is weaving um, those elements, like
Yep.
the Nasadiya Sukta, the creation hymn,
Yep. Yep.
which kind of concludes that nobody knows how it all started. From
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
it goes into the Puranas and how uh, time and again creation happens. And oh, beautiful interpretation, Mahesh. I thoroughly enjoyed. There
Thank
were
you.
a couple of points on the back channel.
I before before we do that, I just want to mention one particular point, Hemant,
Yeah,
regarding this Book of Beginnings specifically, and then maybe we'll pick the questions, right?
sure,
Questions or
sure,
comments.
sure.
In Record of Yoga, in Master's Record of Yoga, the two crazy books, right?
Hmm.
In those two volumes, there is a particular section of writings, Masters, notes, his private notes. Again, it's not published, so it's not meant to be published, but it was, after Master left his body. There is a place where he has noted down dreams, right? Noted down dreams. And these are dreams that are sort of continuing over many days. He has the same dream recurring again. And if you look at the level of detail in that, you will see that it's not even a dream. It's like a vision that's sort of unfolding, that's being shown to him, right? And he notes this particular point, right? Because he sees humans in different cultures, clothes. He sees how you know, uh, I don't want to call it tribes or whatever, right? But how all the different attempts at humanity by life had progressed over time, and how the various states of man is being sort of combined and recombined and so on. And he's noting it down. Okay. And now that process is crazy because he speaks in a crazy amount of detail. He's sort of jotting it down, right? Of how the animal, if you think of, the the various layers of the being, right? About how the divine manifests in each layer. So you had the predominantly vital physical man, there's barely a mind, and then the mind enters, and there is this sort of cycle that's sort of going on, right? Now, so when Master is speaking of the Book of Beginnings and he's speaking of dissolution and all of that, I don't want us to think that he's merely alluding to the Puranic idea or the Hindu idea of the cycles of creation. He has seen much more. He has seen way more, and he has documented it, and he has written it down. And there's of the little that has sort of survived the disciples and all the friendly bunch that we have there in the ashram. But even that is crazy. It's crazy. So as you're reading this, I want us to remember that he's not making use of a poetic trope or a spiritual trope that has existed elsewhere, and he's sort of reusing that material, right? No, no, he's our man has seen much more, and the little evidence that he has left shows that he has seen. So when I spoke of the spiral, you remember right at the beginning, I spoke of the spiral, right? Evolution. Again, that's a symbol that he uses. And he sees in an experience again the spiral, this ascent of life, existence, moving through all the planes of the worlds and going up. You know. So yeah, little point. I wanted to cover that specifically because uh, for those who have not read Record of Yoga, uh, the Book of Beginnings might come out as something, like an exercise, like an exercise in abstraction, right? Like I don't know, like one of those crazy Picasso paintings, right? Mucking around with geometric shapes. It might seem like that, but like I mentioned, and I always like to mention, when Sri Aurobindo says something, take it take it at its face value because he has either seen it, experienced it, and he's describing it in a specific way for a very specific reason. And when he's looking at this book of beginnings, there is not a poetic reconstruction of poetic imagination of how creation would have happened. Nope. There is vision there. He has seen something, and that's what he has documented. So, yeah. Yes,
Beautiful,
Hemant, we can go
beautiful.
to the this thing, boss.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for setting me right over there. And this is the perils of things that you know, and somehow you try to weave in what you already know into what is being said, and we need to consciously keep the known away and allow Arabindo to come fresh and at face value. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that came was about the meaning of inconscient, and I think later on in the explanation, I think you kind of covered that quite detailed. And the question was, does
Uh-huh.
inconscient mean an inanimate object that's devoid of senses? That
It's
was the
it's n- a good.
yeah.
That's a good question, by the way, because inconscient it is a tricky condition, right? Now think of inconscient. If I went to the question now, so here's the if you have experienced deep sleep, you know, and ask yourself, where were you as the sleeper? Where were you? Did you experience anything? Yeah, the answer would be no. You don't even know where you are, because it's blotted out. Nothing is there. Now that is a small explanation, a small hint that is accessible to you and me in terms of what the inconscience is. It's the utter negation of everything. It's not even an object lying there. It's not even an object lying there because all object you've already come to manifestation. It's sort of manifested. Something is there. Even a rock, even a dumb rock, you're already vastly ahead in the evolutionary cycle. Because manifestation has come to be. Everything is there. It's I would say 10 seconds after the Big Bang. A lot of things have already happened, right? So inconscience is before, it's the very negation. of everything. And that's why, I like to think of that, the Upanishadic negation idea, neti, neti, right? Rather than applying it for the divine, if you were to apply it to something that's sort of, I wouldn't say undivine, but, non-divine, nothing is there. It's, if you can think of the void as having something, now scoop it all out, throw it all out. Now, then that's a closer description of the inconscient. But remember, again, please don't. Again, there's another helpful at least for me, is that if you tend to look at any of these things, your reaction to these things have to be balanced. So I make this point especially because, especially in the integral yoga, your perception of something, your reaction to something, uh, uh, is important, and you can train it, right? So if you don't yet have that poise, you can train it. It's important because you are required to experience all levels of consciousness, and either shrinking from it from fear, disgust, unfamiliarity is not going to help you in the long run to experience all the states of your journey to immortality, right? So if you want to do that, and many times you don't have an option. It's like the dark night in the Buddhist path, right? You will be put through that grinder no matter what. Now, inconscience is dark night is almost like being, it's like a little dark friend, right? It's friendly, if you because the inconscient is much more nastier, right? Uh, it's the very negation of life itself, right? So that's inconscience. But that said, again, I'll push you to the Puranic symbol. You know this Puranic symbol of the churn of the cosmic ocean. You would have heard that story, where the Devas on one side and the Rakshasas on the other side, Rakshasas and Asuras on one side, and they're sort of churning for the ambrosia, for Amrita, of immortality, right? They're sort of doing a churn. You need both of them. You need the day and the night. You need the Deva and the Ashura. The Ashuras are not always bad, right? We'll hit that point in our next session. Perhaps they're not always bad. They have a particular element that necessitates their existence, their action. Right. So inconscience is something like that. Right. It's the black womb. It's the black womb. Or the black sun. The Veda describes uses many of these terms. It says it's the twin mothers who foster the divine child. The white sun up above that you see, the supreme sun, and the black sun right at below. Because I mean, think of it in one way, right? If this inconscience is so powerful that it can uphold existence, consciousness, it's fallen. In the fallen state, it's sort of holding it up. If it couldn't do that, we wouldn't exist, right? So this inconscience is something to be feared, but at the same time, something to be acknowledged as supporting this experiment of life and the human endeavor and everything, right? So that is inconscience. I know it's not an exact answer, but trust me, once in integral yoga, at least, once the descent process starts, very unfortunately, you'll be put through states where you might have to touch the subconscient layers, and God forbid, not too long of the inconscient effects, right? So then you will know it yourself, you know, very consciously what it means. So
Brilliant.
yeah,
Your cats are calling for your attention, I think.
my cats are like rogues. So let me,
Mm.
I have I have five rogues sitting at home making life hell for me. They have had their food, and they still, I do not know what they want now.
It's really nice to hear them in the background. Yeah. At this point, I invite
Uh,
people to join us in the speakers panel, and share your thoughts, questions, anything. Shiva, Jataveda ji, Rachna ji, please feel free. Namaste, Jataveda ji. Namaste, Shiva ji.
नमस्ते हेमंत जी. नमस्ते महेश जी. नमस्कार.
Namaste. I love that name. I love it. It's an amazing name.
Jataveda. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one question, Maheshji.
Yes, sir.
In
Please.
Sri Aurobindo talks about evolution.
Yeah.
Exactly the starting point of the involution
Yeah.
and the ending point of the evolution
Yeah.
are different. Whether
Okay.
Sri Aurobindo has done justice to the evolution, because don't you think it has stopped somewhere near the ultimate truth? Obviously, by logic, because as per Upanishads,
Mm-hmm.
Atma va idameva evagra asit. Okay, the involution perfectly it starts and it comes down to the matter. Then from the matter it goes up to the supermind,
Yeah.
and it the truth ascends to that. But don't you think the evolution is not complete? Your thoughts. Thank you.
Oh, sir, Jatavedas, as it is, I get chapel beatings from master, so my thoughts would be a little, how do I put it? It's, I wouldn't say my thoughts, but let me just paraphrase some of the experiences that other people have undergone, right? I'm not at there, to comment on these things. Things I know. I mean, if I know, if I know, I know. But I really can't comment on this from the level at which you're asking this. But I can mention one thing that Satprem says. Satprem says is that he says, see, this life as you are experiencing it as man, with the assistance of science, technology, whatever, says this is not the end. You're still an animal. You're still a scientific animal. That's what you are, right? And all his life, Satprem especially, this Satprem, the chap who sat with the mother and documented the agenda, mother's agenda, and who has written many, many more other books about his journey in the integral yoga. And at one point, so his view is that man is not a dead. I mean, he was only reflecting Sri Aurobindo's statement, right? He says man is a transitionary being. Sri Aurobindo's statement. Transitionary. There's just like the way he evolved from the ape. There is something waiting yet to be born from man, right? Uh, and again, we don't need a Sri Aurobindo to say that, right? Because if you look at the evidence in nature, we know that life evolves always, and we see its effect even now. Now because of our time scales, we are not able to see the bodily changes. But on a principle which is slightly more supple, let's take the mind for instance, right? Because the mind is more suppler. You find that what in the Middle Ages would have been, knowledge that is fit to be in the heads of mathematicians and great geniuses is being done by high schoolers now. High school kids are using calculus. High school kids are more comfortable in technology, or take art forms, right? You find that kids are uh, are doing things that would have been near impossible just a few hundred years ago. And there is this enormous pace at which evolution is running. So I don't think it's stopped. It's more a bias because of our limited
Uh,
vision of
Mahesh,
reality.
I need to clarify one thing here.
Uh-huh.
It's absolutely fine. Whatever you are explaining is, I totally agree with you. But
Uh-huh.
the angle which I am asking is, suppose
Uh-huh.
the psychic being, once it gets the perfection, when it reaches to the ultimate state,
Mm-hmm.
from that point, I am asking. That's all. Everything is perfect. I don't have any issues. But when the psychic being gets its own perfection, it reaches to the
Hmm.
ultimum, and
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely. This
ultimate
is
truth descends to that at that stage of supramentalization. Okay, there at that point of time, I'm just asking, because what happens when the involution happens? Involution is starts from Satchit Ananda, and as you know, it goes up to the matter. But the evolution starts from the matter and comes to the level of supramentalization. That supermind.
there is
The
I see where you're going, but let me make one little observation here, right? I
Sure.
see where you're going. See, some of these things are a little far off in the future, a little far off in the future. They have not manifested as it because there is not enough aspiration. There are people who are not aspiring enough for this collective transition to take place. Now, I make this point with a very specific observation, and that is when you look at the psychic being in any of your inner experiences, right? When you look at the psychic being uh, in your in your dream experience or whatever, you will find that it manifests or it is shown as still as a child, either as a newborn baby or as a 6 to 7 year old. That's how the psychic being is always seen. Now, somewhere it shows, now this is not in terms of time, place, culture, right? Across this, so this is not about, a Western man, Eastern man, Christian man, Hindu man. No. When the psychic being is revealed at what to whatever person, it always comes as a child or as a young boy, girl, whatever, right? Right. Now, somewhere
Wait
that
a
is where
second,
we
wait a
are
second,
from
wait
a
a second. Wait a second, wait a second. I just want to
uh-huh.
say that we all are brothers. We should not fight, right? After all, we all are humans. And as
No,
I,
no. Oh,
Rehan,
as India
Rehan, sorry.
believes,
Rehan, there is no fight here going on. I don't know if you've been following this discussion. So please remain and listen to what is being said. There is no
oh,
fight going on here.
okay, okay, I apologize.
okay. So, evolutionarily speaking, from a spiritual being perspective, you know, the being that survives death and goes from life to life, the psychic being, is only at that stage of growth, right? And that's where we are collectively, most of us, right? Or when I say most of us, pretty much all of us, right? Except for the beings who have descended. Now, that's what I think. Again, this is my personal opinion. I've not read this anywhere. Right? It's in the observation that I've made in terms of how you look at your spiritual birth and growth over time and looking at experiences of others, whoever has documented it. And that's what I think, right? Now, which means, now, though the psychic being is perfect, it knows, how to aspire, just a glorious, splendorous aspiration it is capable of, but still it's not powerful enough to come and, you know, take possession of the being. We are not there as it, individually and collectively. There is not enough a sufficient mass of people. But, like I said, Satprem makes this point, right? He has made that transition. He has made that transition. There's a nice little video on YouTube where it's a French interview, and he speaks about this, human condition and the fact that we have to discover something else, and the truth is not any of this philosophies or religions or this and that and whatnot. And he says, the truth is something else, and he's only alluding to what the mother said and the master said. But there are records elsewhere that observation that Sakre makes, saying he has made that transition. He says it's done, right? I've sort of gone the other side, right? Now, what that other side is, whether it's supramentalization or there's some aspect of the Satchidananda that's come down into matter, we do not know. I do not know, at least, right? So individuals are getting to it. So it's there, but collectively it takes a much larger effort. So I don't think there is any lack. If there is any lack, there is only the lack of aspiration. But the curve to immortality, that path has been laid. It's there. And I like to think of it as the Vedic seers and all the seers of the world waiting on the portals of some spiritual sun, waiting to welcome us, right? It's there. It's us who are a little lazy. We got to walk, we got to aspire and work for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh. Yeah, it's a long way to get clarity on that because it's not in our experience. And the Satprem is a very nice guy and has contributed a lot. Especially his contribution to the agenda is really wonderful. Apart from that,
Ah,
maybe an adventure of consciousness
yeah,
and other his works are wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful. Okay,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
okay, next one. Can I ask two more questions, Mahesh ji?
Oh, fire away, sir, anytime, please.
Okay, integral yoga.
Uh-huh.
Uh, in ultimate analysis, does Sri Aurobindo implies a qualified monism or qualified non-dualism?
Sir, my line got a little choppy, but I think the question was in integral yoga, does Sri Aurobindo allude to qualified monism or qualified non-dualism, right? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. See, actually, we cannot or we are not supposed to pigeonhole Sri Aurobindo. I know very well. In spite of that, just for our academic interest, if at all, uh, in the ultimate analysis, as opposed to traditional Advaita and opposed to the duality, because Sri Aurobindo accepts Advaita but in his own sense, and he integrates everything like the individuality, the universe, and the Brahman or the Paramatman, Purushottama. What I mean to say is, in the ultimate analysis, does Sri Aurobindo imply a qualified non-dualism than non-dualism or a dualism? He treats the path of a qualified non-dualism.
Okay, so uh, uh, I'm sure Master has said one or more comments to this effect, but there's also this other perspective. Any one of these framings, whether it's Dvaita, Dvaita, Shishta Dvaita, whichever aspect that you're going to, whichever framing, taxonomy that you're going to take a look at, it's the fruit of a certain set of experiences. That's all they all are. You have had a certain experience, and it's that experience, that worldview that you have documented and given that name of Advaita. Now, as far as Sri Aurobindo being the practical person that he is, extremely practical, divinely practical, right? These are just convenient mental frames that we could use to understand where we are, but these are not the full-fledged maps that are going to guide our evolution to that immortal state. Yeah, they just little tourist posters. That's all they are, right? They give you a little map, but what matters is if you look at the experiences that I've had, right, where there is no distinction between a predominantly Dvaita experience or Advaita experience, and they're all coming. They're all coming. So I as far as I'm concerned, if you ask me, are you Advaitin or Advaitin? I say, I really don't know. I'm at a level I even don't care, because if Krishna is in the mood to treat me as Radha today and give me that Dvaita experience, I'll gladly have that experience. I'll polish his shoes. I'll make him tea, or maybe light a cigarette if he wants. I'll do all of that. I'll serve him, right? Bhakti. And tomorrow Krishna is in a slightly more kinder mood, and he says, "Okay, you're a part of me now. Yeah, and come, merge with my feet. Boom, done. I'm also Krishna. Advaita. It's there. What do I care? I don't care. But give me the experience. The experience is what matters. And if you have aspired long enough, if you have journeyed long enough, you will see that when the experiences come, they don't come strictly in the way the books it is defined in the books, in the holy books, right? In our scriptures. They don't come that way. They come. Today you're having what do you say? You almost feel the shades of nirvana. Tomorrow you're feeling the shade of a psychic bhakti like Prahalada, right? It's sort of following its own curve, or rather, the curve that your swabhava is more suited for, or your aspiration is calling down. So I think all of these taxonomies are only things of convenience that helps a beginner approach. But if you look at the practical sadhana perspective, experiences don't come in that manner. They don't care how, if you're wide enough, that is, you shift from karma yoga to tantra to bhakti. In the span of a day, you're making all these transitions, right? And you have not gone mad. It's there. Your being is holding up. You know. So I would say Sri Aurobindo, the integral yoga prepares one to experience all these states of consciousness, right? Well, whatever Shankara went through, whatever Ramanuja went through, whatever Ramakrishna went through, or Swami Vivekananda went through, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went through, all of that we ought to experience, right? Stick if we take that sort of a worldview, yeah, I'll let the scholars say what they want, right? About whether this is Dvaita or Advaita. Like I mentioned in the last session, I'm a beggar. I will eat all the food. I'm not the one who's going to say, "Oh, today you shouldn't give me this, oh Krishna." I don't care. I'm hungry. Give me food, I'll eat. Right? Any food, whatever he wants me to give today. He wants to give me today. That is. So yeah, that's my take.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah,
Beautiful,
super.
Mahesh.
Beautiful,
Beautiful.
Mahesh. Okay,
Namaskar, Acharya.
nice. Just, I want to ask one more question. Hemanji, can I?
Yes. So
Yes.
in sequence, you came first, so you can ask one more, and then Shiva, and then Deep, and then Tara. So fire
Okay.
away, Dataviraji. Yeah.
Yeah. Mahesh ji, uh,
Yes, sir.
Sri Aurobindo is the only uh, darshanika who talks about the transformation.
Yeah.
He talks about the transformation and even the triple transformation and all.
Hmm.
The important when he talks about the pranic transformation, when he talks about the chaita and all those things, but finally, even he talks about the physical transformation.
Yeah.
My question is, when the soul,
Mm.
when it gets a perfection, when that the spark and the jivatman are the central being, when it get merged with the very psychic being, when at the stage of that perfection,
Hmm.
still moon will be there, sun will be there, stars will be there, earth will be there, whole entire universe will be there. Jada is going to be there forever as eternal. If that is the case, what kind of a physical transformation Sri Aurobindo is talking about? Is it just confined to body or much more than that?
And
Thank you.
this is, sir, I think it's much, much more than that. It's much, much more than that. And I'm not going to get into details here because, see, because when Master is speaking of transformation of matter, it is not the matter that we are looking at right now. He speaks about a subtle matter and a subtle earth, and there's a subtler level of consciousness, which seems to be from the descriptions given like a mirror image of Earth, but only more beautiful, less tainted, untainted. It's almost like a Gandharva world, right? That's the subtler world and subtle Earth that he refers to many times. And it's my understanding. So, it's not, I could be right, I could be wrong, I don't know as of now, because until I've had the experience, I can't speak about it. But I can speak to the fact that there is the subtle being which has a vaster degree of freedom, but has all the senses, but operating at a much more level of power, and purity and so on. And the way life would change once it sort of life and matter would change once life is divinized, we can only imagine from a almost like a science fiction perspective at the moment. Now, unless we ourselves enter into any of those states, it's difficult to speak of those. And for those who have had any experiences of your subtle body or moving through the planes, you know that the laws are all there, but they all seem to operate differently, right? Or if you have had any siddhi manifested in you, you know that the limitation of thought or hearing or will is only a temporary sort of restriction placed upon your being, because when once you are in these higher states of consciousness, you can put a thought in somebody and they'll call you back, etc. You can play around with these siddhis, right? uh, uh, so who knows? Until we enter, we can't really speak of it. Now that said, in the Auroval website, I'll just probably fish the link and send to him, and maybe then he can distribute. There is a particular person, I forget the name, but there is a short story he has written. Again, a disciple in Auroval, and that short story is called 1 million BC. 1 million AD. 1 million AD, I think. 1 million AD. Now, this short story is talking about a condition of Earth where after 1 million years, how would this divinized life and matter look like? And it's a glorious imagination. And I mean, it's not just imagination, right? This is a different order of sci-fi, because I felt that it was inspired. It's coming from some plane of inspiration, because that world building in that short story was so amazingly complete and stunning to look at. Absolutely stunning read, right? Now, I don't want to give any spoilers, but if you guys are interested, just search for this 1 million AD. It's on one of those Auroval sites. I forget this gentleman's name, but a biggie, a fairly well-known person in the Orwell circles, I believe. But you get to the short story. You will and read this. It's a very quick read. You can read it in, like, say, half an hour or whatever, right? So you will get the sense of what life could become if it were divinized, and how your relationship with the rest of nature, animals, man, animate, inanimate, how everything changes, everything changes, because if you have ever had experiences where, there was this, I can tell you this particular incident with the mother. There were these two ladies, I do not know, I don't know their age or whatever, in the ashram. And it seems they were sort of, no, not in the ashram. This was in mother's European period. There were two of her friends who were complaining about the heat, about the sun being too harsh and so on. And mother makes a statement to the effect of, why don't you become friends with the sun? Right? Why don't you become friends with the sun? And it seems they tried it, and the sun was not beating down on them that hard. Don't ask me how, why, etc. But that's the recorded experience, right? And trust me, I've sort of tried this in my own way. When the being was open enough, when the psychic was out, a little bit, right? When the psychic was out, you make that word list clear, right? And there are events that are configured where you know that that sun that is there on your horizon, that sun, Indian sun, relentless, merciless sun, understands there's something happening. Now, uh, take it for what it's worth, but mother speaks of one experience, and that's once the divine element within you sort of comes out, then the equations are different. It's not the life we think of right now is a I'd like to think that it's a very pale thing, and that is the full blown, full spectrum experience, of divine life, which is to come later. So yeah,
Thank you, Mahesh ji. It was so nice.
welcome, sir.
Enjoyed listening to you. Okay, we can meet often here and discuss. Thanks a lot. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Hemant ji, for a wonderful
No,
room. Thank
no
you.
problem, Dr. Ravi. Thank you. Shiva, would you like to share your thoughts and any questions?
Yes, sure. So I'd like to share this, that something about Sherbindo which I found to be so unique, which is not there in any other yogic literature, not at least in the modern ones, that there was no one else who was making this comparison. That first of all, nobody first gave this planes of consciousness in English to anyone. I found that even in the Rig Veda, this was kind of missing. That with these lokas are not exactly in such descriptive ways described the way Savitri describes them. And then how Sri Aurobindo speaks about the supermind as the balance between Shiva and Shakti, or Ishwar and Shakti, and how he calls that as the central technology of the universe, which is converting the one consciousness into many consciousness. So he makes divine Shakti first, as if in his sadhana, and Ishwar as if as a balancing act of Shakti. Normally, in the sadhanas which in the Upanishads we speak about, or any of the yogic systems we speak about, either we speak about an impersonal being from the point of practical practice, or we speak about the Ishwar, or the Krishna version, or the Shiva version, but the Ishwar version. In Sharbindo's sadhana, I found one thing to be very unique, that he took always Shakti as first, mother as first. And through the mother, he said, you open your being to the mother's force, and she will do the rest of the sadhana for you. So from a practical point of view, I found Sri Aurobindo to be doing Tantra in a very Vedantic way. So he was doing the whole functionality of Tantra, the Ishwar Shakti balance, but removing the ritualistic part, and he did it in the complete Vedantic way, which I think so was his ultimate genius, or his uniqueness, how he pushed out his sadhana. Second thing, what even Jataveda ji observed, which is very accurate that in transformation, what happens? So Mother made certain comments about transformation actually in this book called The Agenda. She said this, that sometimes, though she was 85, 90 years old at that point, when the agenda was being written by Satprem, or being noted by, when he was communicating with the mother. So she said sometimes her age seemed to be reversed to a 20-year-old person, so young that even a 90-year-old person could seem to be physically be seen as a 20-year-old person. So somebody who was working on things like anti-aging at that time, or anti-aging consciousness at that time, almost like what they were trying to achieve, an immortality of the body. So trying to imprint the immortality of the soul in a physical biological body which should not die, which what she said was, she was trying to get this one in many consciousness, or this Ishwar Shakti consciousness of the Supreme, into the physical atoms or physical cells of the body by surrendering the physical cells. So nowhere I've seen a physical sadhana which allows you such a facility where you could transform not only just your inner soul consciousness or body consciousness, but also trying to making it immortal. She also made such comments when somebody asked her that what does the supermind substance feel like in the body also. So she made these comments that in the physical body, it is something like a diamond feeling, and yet like a gas feeling. So something as hard as a diamond, something as soft as a gas, and yet it's the supermind coming into the physical body. Attempt to bring down spiritual forces to the very atoms and trying to transform it, and along with the principles of Tantra, these two things together, and also the evolution part, which is again the scope of Shakti, these are things were the most unique portions of Sri Aurobindo, which
Abs-
no other sadhana, not including the Upanishads, speak about.
Absolutely.
Yes, please, Manji, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd like to add to that, right? There is there is the memory of these old attempts. And no, before I go there, I want to make this point. Satprem documents uh, this process of the descent, the descending process, entering the various levels of the being and then touching the material base and even further below, sort of going below his feet. And he speaks of this process, harder than a diamond, lighter than a gas, right? And he speaks of it as literally pounding him day in, day out, right? Entering through the head, passing through his being, going under his feet. And that series of books, those series of books, Notebooks of an Apocalypse, not yet fully translated from the French. There are only few volumes that are available, but uncanny description of the process. Uncanny. I mean, if but for Supreme, some of what is happening in our own being would have probably gone mad with worry, or done something bad to ourselves if we had not known that that's how it's happening, that's how it occurs, because the way the physical reacts to the entry of this higher force is not funny at all, it's not pleasant at all, it's brutal. And so yeah, Supreme documents it. But this other point, right, this memory, there is a Tamil saint, Siddha, in the Siddha tradition, who speaks of the physical matter, the material body being transformed. He calls it the golden body, right? So there have been attempts before on a much smaller, on a smaller scale. People have sort of seen this possibility, but they had not discovered the secret of bringing things down, right, down to the material level. Number one. Number two, there are memories. I like to think of it again, this is my view. There are memories of this attempt of trying to bring things down into matter. There are hints in the Rig Veda, especially, where they seem to be aware of this problem, right? They seem to be aware of the problem, especially in the epithets or in the symbols that they use. When they say that the body is made of unbaked clay, they are aware of the fundamental, lack in substance, in the human substance, in the flesh, right? Number one. And you look at the legend of the Dichi, right? The rishi who lends his bones to be made into a weapon for Indra to fight, right? Now look at that symbol, right? To me, it seems like the for the mind to be divinized, right? Because Indra, the divine mind or the human mind, right? For the mind to be divinized, there had to be opening at the physical level or at the subconscious level where something had to be opened down below for this slightly higher thing to come and manifest, right? Now, so there is a sort of concordant action that's sort of happening. Now, you will find that in Sri Aurobindo's sadhana also, right? Now, as he goes to the heights, you find that paradoxically he'll have to dig deeper. And now again, he has documented it in many of his poems. So, he speaks of digging in the subconscient mire, right? And the inconscient. He speaks of digging, and it's a brutal process. And it's the same thing with the mother. Even she documents it, right? So to rise higher, it looks like you got to dig in deeper, and it's again the Vedic rishis had also found even those guys were digging now at the individual level, not at the universal level, but they were still digging because it's the Vedic rishi who says that I found the deity at the bottom, at the very bottom. I saw the deity sleeping. Now it's this deity that the mother speaks that saying that she woke up. That's what comes in the agenda. Now remember the Veda, the Rig Veda, and I mean it's for me it's like a tremendous adventure, right? I mean imagine God knows how many thousands of years ago, there is this Vedic Rishi who is sort of, gone into the subconscient, in the inconscient. He knows that the deity is there. Yeah, he sees it. He's, the sun on the very heights that he's familiar with. Yeah, he's digging here below, and he sees that same sun sleeping down below. Number one, and there's another rishi, right? Again, this is a this is like again a staggering thing, right? One of the Vedic rishis, Dirga Tamas. Now, now ask yourself, why do you want to give yourself that name, Dirga Tamas, right? A long darkness, is it? You know, that's how you translate that Sanskrit, right? Dirga, persistent, persistent tamas. So that to me almost seems like a description of the subconscient, you know, sloth and tamas and everything that sort of plagued this guy for a long, long time. How long? So long that he is known by that term, by that condition. But it flung him into something else, right? So yes, I think you know obviously Sri Aurobindo is the one who sort of you know collecting all these strands and stabilizing them in his own consciousness and goes to unimaginable heights and sort of is sort of bringing things down, right? So that it can be made feasible for riffraff like me to sort of even speak about it, know about it, and have some of these experiences. Yeah, you know, it's again, it's just an observation. So yeah.
Beautiful. Shiva, can we move on to Deep, or do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just one thing.
Sure.
Um, so Indra's reference, what Maheshji is saying, is accurate because also if you see that Indra's weapon in the Rig Veda is Vajra or the diamond. So when Mother is speaking about this diamond-like thing in matter, uh, and also this gaseous like feeling, so these are the gas is also a particular goddess or god form in the Vedas, even in the Tantra. Like in Tantra, the gaseous form is more like the Dhumavati Devi, and in the Vedas the Vajra is more like the Indra quality. Also there are devis called Vajrani and things like that. So I feel these things were explained in that in these various cultures and traditions, and Sri Aurobindo weaved them in synthesis. So
Absolutely.
that's about it. Just
Yeah,
one thing.
yeah, agree.
Yeah, in fact, Satprem has captured these things in Veda and Human Destiny. No, he has traced out these things with explanations. Nice works by Satprem.
Yeah.
Over
Mahesh, that was, yeah, Hemant, you want to say something
No,
before I
no, no.
continue?
I was just going to hand over, but yeah, you started speaking at the same time. That's okay. Go on.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, Mahesh, that has been, I enjoyed the last room as well. It's been, always a pleasure to listen to this. I I want to ask you something which is, a little more, uh, I guess I do have, okay, I have a couple of questions, but
Sure,
I'll
sir.
start with the one which is more, let's say, maybe consider it a concern.
Yeah.
As you would know, because now if we look at Sri Aurobindo, just as a personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is somebody who's a very, very open person.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really a conventional person by any standards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And do you ever feel that we in this country especially, right, we tend to get bogged down by tradition. For the last 10 centuries we've sort of been bogged down in a way by Shankara's narration of the Upanishads, and that has become the dominant discourse in a way, at least on the Advait side of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one name. It doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
what we tend to do is bind ourselves in these orthodoxies,
Yeah.
right, and then get burdened by all. Like there's an old joke of, I think, Krishnamurti had said this joke about
Mm-hmm.
how when somebody was about to reach the truth, then the devil came along and said, "Don't worry, I'll organize it for them," so they'll never reach it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you what I'm saying, that we get so so stuck in the conceptions and the teachings, and we glorify the teachings and worship the teaching, but and we lose the the pragmatic aspect of it. Two, we and the experiential aspect of it, like the truly transformative idea. And two, also the fact that, you know, that we do, let's say 100 years have transpired since Sri Aurobindo,
Yeah.
about, right, 80 now, but since, let's say, he started in 1890, a century has gone by. And to me, whenever I read, the beauty of his synthesis and his integration was always that he reminded me of somebody who was able to tap into the time that he was in and then synthesize everything, keeping that completely, and integrating that with the contemporaneous, right?
Yeah.
But what I generally find, even amongst the devotees, let's say, not this is not a critical, but generally,
Yeah.
is this sort of, do you ever get the feeling that this kind of a forming into a little cult, into a little group, and then, becoming, and then almost becoming like, it can almost become an ego trip. Our master's the best, we have the supramental, teaching and all that, da
Yeah.
da 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 da, right? Which, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? And
Very much.
and yeah, and so that's why I always was never able to sort of be a part of that sort of group in a way.
Yeah.
Of course, I've always been to the ashram, been in these meetings, been in these get-togethers, but you see how we, like, and I've seen this in tradition, that the very people who seem to be the most devoted to a master become most antithetical in their own sort of, application of the teachings, and they
Absolutely.
exhibit a behavior which is in contrast to what the person is
Absolutely.
actually trying to
Absolutely.
convey.
Absolutely. On
So
both on both your point. I mean, is that all the observations?
yeah, I mean, there's another point which is a bit metaphysical. So, but I want to maybe hear your answer here to this, and then if I can ask that, I will.
Yeah. 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 So on both the points, I couldn't agree with you more. Right? I couldn't agree with you more. Because the traditional Hindu notion of what constitutes spirituality has become what do you say an exercise in dealing with dead symbols, right? Literally dead symbols, right? When I say dead symbols, I use the word very consciously because you attend the best homa yajna, you see, and if you I mean if your inner perception has grown enough to sort of see where each person is, as would happen in this yoga, right? If you persist long enough, you can clearly see what the guy is capable of. Yeah, and you find that almost all of them are parrots, literal parrots. They are mouthing the words. They don't have a clue about what that state of realization is. Absolutely nothing. It's a dead thing, right? It's an absolutely dead affair. Now, is it dead because the ritual itself is wrong? Because again, I grew up with literally no idea of rituals and with these so-called modern scientific notions of ritual is a bad thing. That's how I grew up. uh, bad thing or an ineffective thing, rather, right? But then I've had experiences, states of consciousness where I could see the method of the ritual. I could see the occult logic behind it. And I've witnessed its efficacy many, many times. And when I say many, many times, and it's like staggering efficacy. Even if the guy who's doing the mantra, who's doing the homa, doesn't have a clue, if you are ready, you're able to perceive what's happening, right? So the yajna is working as advertised. It's just that the people are dumb not to see it, right? They can't see it because they're blind, because they're framing themselves in these symbols, but somewhere either the aspiration is not there or the being is not open to that experience, and our lot are happy with, again, I don't want to malign because each person to themselves, it's their swabhava, it's their soul curve. Having a darshan of the Murti, they are extremely happy. And not for a moment amongst the millions who pass through the sanctum doors, I mean, how many people pause and say, hang on a second, I want to see Vishnu directly, not representations. I want to see him direct. Even toenail of Vishnu will do, but I want to see Vishnu, something of it directly, right? Now, somewhere, the collective notion of what constitutes aspiration, people have reduced it to the saffron robe. They say it's only that guy who's sort of, who's fit to have aspiration. He has to be a vegetarian. He has to do this. And all of these details, there is not that simple Chaitanya, like, not simple, but you get the drift, right? There's not that Chaitanya type aspiration that says, damn all this. I want Krishna. I love him. That's all that matters to me. I don't care. If Krishna says, eat this, I'll bloody eat it, because what matters? Because the all beloved is asking me to do it. So I'll do it, right? Now, somewhere we have sort of lost that, right? And we seem to live in this second-hand experience. It's the ritual that worked for another guy. It's the prayer that worked for another guy. And it is that we repeat. And nowhere have we sat down and said, what is my prayer? What is my call to the divine? Right? I don't want to repeat Shankara's prayer. I mean, I like the guy. He's a good guy. I have nothing against him. I don't want to repeat Madhava's prayer or Ramanuja's prayer or even Chaitanya's prayer. I don't want to do that, right? Maybe I will use them because when I'm a child, I do not know how to pray. I will use Mira's bhajan, I will use Andal's bhajan, I will use the poems of the Siddhas of the southern tradition. I will use any one of these things to learn how to aspire, to learn how to call. But somewhere we have to grow up and say, okay, what is my prayer? And my prayer is my call. I don't want Krishna to come and tell me that, like, dude, that's someone else's prayer. What the hell are you doing with it? How do you want to call? Now, and that's what is missing, right? But somewhere I think that's where the destruction, the modern notion of science and society, all of this clash, that's sort of engendering this great destruction of the old traditional forms. I think eventually it's a very helpful affair because once people have lost, they're going to ask themselves or be honest to themselves and say, okay, did this Homa work? Did this Yajna work? Right? So if you say that it ought to give me this, did it happen? If it didn't happen, where is the flaw? Is the flaw in me, the Yajamana of the Yajna? Didn't I do something properly? Or was the conductor of this Yajna wrong? Was he an unfit instrument? It could be any one of these things that are flawed. So people will come to this point where they are asking themselves, saying, what didn't work? And they will find eventually, like I did, that the flaw is in me. I wasn't ready. I wasn't open enough. When I'm open, the damn thing works. I've seen it to work. Right? So, and not to be like this in our third world spiritual beggars, right? Oh, you gave me one extra laddu. I'm so blessed. I don't want your laddu. I'll buy laddu. I want Vishnu. I want Shiva. I want to see Mahadeva directly. I don't care if Shiva gave a vision to any one of the Shaivite saints. Yeah, but that's good for him. What about me? I'm also his child, right? Now that call has to come back. Now that confidence, that call, and the courage to stand up and say, I've had the damned vision. I've seen Shiva, right? If someone asks me, why are you still a moron? Would say that, yet to grow. There are things that, if Shiva comes in me, then we wouldn't be having this conversation because I'll probably, use a Siddhi and throw you out or some shit like that, right? We need to come to that confidence where we can boldly stand up and say, have you seen these gods? You say, yes, I've seen. What did you see? I saw this. How did it feel? I feels like this. What did you gain? You say, okay, I got this, 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 this. This is what I got. I'm a transformed being now. Now, am I fully divinized? No, not as yet. But I was dumb. I didn't know shit to begin with. Now I can write poetry, right? I can write fairly decent poetry. Now, who gave you that? The gods gave me that. Now, they open that faculty. They pour their inspiration down. Now, that's how my life is transformed. Now, if each person did that, then a lot of this conflict sort of vanishes. It becomes immaterial, right? Because then it's each one of us saying, how do I get to it? You have a very pragmatic stance. Now, that's my answer to the first question. Uh, Now to the second one in terms of the ashram, right? I would repeat the same thing, right? And all of these guys, I mean, I don't, again, apologies if I sound cocky in these things, in these affairs, right? Most of them who are lecturing, are literally so many people who lecture about Sri Aurobido's yoga, who say, what is this, what is right, oh, this is not Hinduism, oh, it is not this, oh, it is not that. All of that is very nice, but you see, there is that, sanctification that is happening, right? That is happening. And very few of them, there are very few exceptions, right? Let's say someone like Shraddhalu, our man is experiential, right? When he's saying something, you know in the way he's describing the process, he has seen it, he has experienced it, and he's giving you a certain perspective in public, right? In public, whatever he can share, he's sort of putting it forth. All of us need to be doing that. Now, we can't, I mean, no one has a copyright over Sri Aurobindo. I know that they belong to the organization, but, in my opinions, at least I don't give a damn. I only look at it as, I'm also a master's mind-born son, like, him and this, like many of you are. We are the mind-born sons of Sri Aurobindo, right? And the way we represent his name by living it in our consciousness, having that courage, having that experience to come out boldly and say, yes, I've had. Why are you not wearing saffron? You say not needed. Why are you smoking? Not needed. Right? I don't have to be a saint. I can be where I am. All that matters is that did the divine respond? Yes, the divine responded. Then I'm set. Then I'm sorted. I don't need Auroville's label or Ashram's label. All I need is the consent of only two people involved, or two in one, right? I need the mother to carry me, and I need master's nod, right? Only two things are needed, right? As long as two are there and they are saying, okay, who the hell are these people, right? It's irrelevant. So I would say that, at the risk of sounding again extremely cocky or arrogant, I would say that wherever we are, any one of those children, us, right? Wherever we stand, that's ashram. That's the ashram, right? Yeah, we make that ashram. Yeah, it doesn't need to be in Pondicherry, of course, it's their place, it's a special place, etc., etc. But I would say that not all Sri Aurobindo's disciples sitting in Pondicherry or connected to the ecosystem are full-blown representatives, right? Because you don't see very many reaching the level that Supreme reached. Has it hit your body consciousness? Are you experiencing this? Has it happened? No, they are still talking or in all luminous terms. Whenever anyone talks about the yoga in luminous terms, right? Please understand that they are still in the ascension process. The descent hasn't started as it. It's the very few who will talk about the descent because that's where the fun begins. The dismantling of the human system so that the newer system can come in begins once the descent begins, and that process is bloody. It's brutal, and that's what I like about Satprem, right? No sugarcoating. He tells you it's painful. It creaks. The whole system creaks in pain and anguish, and that's what the mother went through in her agenda, right? And once the cycle starts again, it's up to the divine, right, to for this process to begin. But once it starts, it's unmistakable. You know that even the little that you're getting hit by is brutal. It's horrible, right? But that's the process. And how do you know it's a process? Because the mother has documented it. Master doesn't speak of it, and that's what the mother says, right? He says, child, Monpetti, he didn't tell me anything, nothing of the process. He's not uttering a word. and he has endured that hell, and that's what he has captured in one of his poems, right? He says he's bleeding in 1,000 places. He says it's a horrible description of the process. That's all the evidence that he has left, and we see that it comes a trillionth diluted. It comes to us, and we are still not able to handle it. So I wouldn't take this, how the ashram people are very seriously, because I don't think they are the sole representatives of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And whoever, wherever they are, if they can have the experience and be another locus for that transformation to happen, right? I would say that's where the ashram is, right? To the extent that they can communicate about it, etc., etc. But yeah, that's my take.
So you don't sound at all cocky to me. I just wanted to see if you know how you feel about what I feel very deeply as well. And but also, I mean, I think that the essential point that you state, which I always talk about, because sure, how the idea of the individual completely expressing themselves, like what the swabhav, the swadharma,
Yeah,
the whole point of just expressing yourself, being that individual,
yeah,
which is to me the greatness of Sri Aurobindo, because somehow our yoga got the idea of somehow the decimation of the individual into some sort of weird oblivion or whatever it was.
absolutely,
And I think
absolutely,
that's a terrible, terrible, terrible development.
absolutely.
Um, I I just have one more small question which
Sure,
I'll
sir.
ask, which is also a bit, um, you know. So do you ever think about this? Like the one question that I have about, because I think the whole thing is laid out so beautifully, you know, the whole process, the whole metaphysics, the whole everything, the method, everything is laid out lovely. The connection, of course, if one has a live connection to the mother,
Yeah,
that's a whole different thing, which is actually the whole essential thing. The rest of it is just, really like the scribbles on the board, really,
yeah, yeah.
But 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 in this idea of this sort of utopian future of this supramental and the supramentalization of matter, the, I mean, I think about that. Like I'm working with imagination here,
Mm-hmm,
and this is not the dominant aspect of the practice for me. It's a very pragmatic thing, like you were talking about Sri Aurobindo earlier, but also about, I do wonder
mm-hmm,
that this sort of utopian vision is this kind of utopian, once this utopia is arrived at or whatever it is, and of course we have a long way to go. So, but again, the question is a good one,
mm-hmm,
that is, are we really destined to be in a utopia, or is this some sort of an evolution that I guess we could consider it a evolution which itself will be infinite in nature, since the divine is infinite in nature? And so the evolution itself, maybe sometimes I think, maybe it could be that we always think of that some alien beings will come here and redeem us, or maybe I sometimes think maybe the evolution is destined to take us as be alien beings into other galaxies. And you know what I'm saying,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because the fact, to me, it's a pretty remarkable thing that we can even extend our mind to the fact that our consciousness can comprehend even this much. There's obviously more we don't know than we know, but even this kind of a comprehension of how consciousness is unfolding into nature and how this process is happening is a fairly remarkable thing. If you I mean, that's the way I see it, and I think that's, and for that I thank Sri Aurobindo, of course, right?
Of course, of
Because
course.
without that revelation would never happen,
Absolutely,
but
absolutely.
it's such a remarkable thing that it does make you think that, oh my God, maybe this is infinite, so, but I just wonder how you might have thought about it, or you maybe came across something and read something of Sri Aurobindo where he's touching on this. I've read most of the texts like Record and all the other texts, but then you seem to have other sources which you might have touched on, which
Not,
I don't know.
not exactly sources. It's see, because it's in the future, and if until at least some parts of it are touched by let's say even the lower levels of the supermind, I think it's difficult to answer this question um, because since it pertains to the future, you need something of that Sachidananda's time vision, triple vision, right? The knowledge of past, present, and future to see how some of this might unfold, right? Or at least to intuit its possibilities, right? So until we reach that level, I think it is tricky to sort of wonder about some of these aspects. But there is uh, one point that I take heart from, right? There's one particular point. When someone asks Sri Aurobindo, saying, will you come back again? He makes this point that no, not in this human body, not again. I'm not coming back, right? And he makes this point that, in the first body, supramentalized body, the divinized matter, he says the first body that I will take, right? Is happening. Now, there are a couple of issues, to put it mildly, and I mean it with some sort of humor and happiness in my heart. So it's not like a what do you say, skeptic or a bitter observation or anything like that. So when he is making that statement, you know that there is much, much more that is yet to come. It's much, much more. Because knowing what he knows and knowing him, he is definitely not wasting time. He's definitely not wasting time. And his answer is categorical, saying, not the stupid human body, not again. Right? Too many variables, perhaps, too many unknowns, perhaps, can't take the risk again. So not no, I'm not coming back, he says. But the first supramentalized body, right? The divinized body, that I will take. I'll come back. Now, imagine what he has done already. Even the known is staggering. And God knows what he was doing, because the last 20, 30 years, apart from the letters, he's not telling much. He hasn't told the mother, leave us, right? We are riffraff. He hasn't told the mother what he was doing. So there is the problem, the problem of existence, because even until the very last days, when before he left his body, he has taken the decision to leave the body, and that's why he's going and completing some books of Savitri in a hurry. Uh, so he has taken that decision sometime back itself, and disciples are asking him. He says, "No, I'm not coming back." In that time, would you believe he's still noting down some verses of the Rig Veda that have come down, and he's interpreting them at that time, right? I mean, he has figured out the formula, and he tells this to one of his disciples in a letter. He says, "I have the formula now. I know how it is done." Right? That is the path to immortality. I mean, that is like a crazy admission, unbelievable admission. And at that time, he is noting down something of the Veda, something of the Rig Veda. He's noting down, saying, this is the interpretation. So I don't think the problem is solved. The ladder is infinite. The spiral is an infinite spiral. And when Master says he's going to come back, I'm sure he's not going to sit there and smoke pipe, right? And I mean it out of love, right? Not disrespect or anything. He knows that. He's going to come and write, I don't know, another 1,000 poems and put another scheme of yoga, and we'll again, you and I and Hemant and all of this group will be there in divinized bodies wondering, damn, there's another yoga to do. So, yeah. So that's the pathfinder. So he's going to chart the path and say, okay, here are another 1,000 ladders to climb, child. Go now. Yeah. So as long as he leads, I'm neither willing nor unwilling. As long as he's there, it's fine. We'll just stick around near his feet. Things will be fine. So that's my take on that immortality business, cycle business, and so on.
Nice, nice. Thank you. You remind me of that. Often he talks about the Trikal Drishti in his record,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
and he's talking about that a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very intriguing, actually. Awesome, awesome. Lovely to sort of chat with you. And thanks so much for this room. I mean, this is a delight.
Yeah, we started last week, and looks like we're going to be conducting this room pretty much every week until Mahesh says, "Enough, boss. I can't talk anymore."
No, no, no. Until Master says, don't kill my work more.
Yeah.
See,
In the interest of time. Yeah.
even
Sorry. Go
even
on.
even that is like this negative sadhana, right? To pester him so much that he says, "Come down, shut up now," and that's the time we catch his feet, and we don't leave it.
Yeah. It's been 2.5 hours. How are you? How are you feeling, Mahesh? Can we continue for some more time? There are a few more speakers,
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. We can, Hemant.
so we'll go by order. Rupmati, do you want to share your thoughts? Rupmati, we can't hear you. In case you're speaking, I see that you're not on mute, but can't hear you. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to Madhir and Raj. Raj has been in and out. Madhirji, over to you.
Thank you, MNG. For me, I'm very naive in this aspect. So please, um, yeah. No, I do have two questions. One is like, it seems that there's something magical about the mother. Is it like, what kind of mother are we? I have no idea what are we talking about. So I'll be very happy. It seems like there can be a broadband connection with the mother. So I'm very curious. And the second question is this sort of idea of super heaven. And actually, I have even a third question, which is like, why are we even talking about Aurobindo himself? Or like, is it all concluded in his personality, or is there more to it? Three questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the first one. Who's the mother? Please help me with the second and third later after I finish with this. Uh, uh, on the mother, I mean, I'm too small to comment on her, but I'll recount something that Shiravindo tells her from one of the early meetings that they had, right? So, mother is coming to visit him. Uh, so I'm sure some of you know that she feels his presence almost 60. She says 60 or 40 nautical miles away on the shore. I mean, from the shore on the waters, she says she could feel the physical atmosphere changing tangibly, right? So they have their visit, they make their meeting, and mother goes back. I don't know, Japan, Europe, I don't know where. I don't remember those aspects right very well. But she writes an experience that she has had. She writes an experience, and the experience is again a fantastical experience. Again, these letters are available, or they're published, where mother says she found her physical envelope widen, rise above the earth, and uh, there's something. Her being was enveloping the earth. She says, that was the experience. It's enveloping the earth, and she's high above, and that's the experience. And it's a very detailed experience, and she's sort of listing it out in crystal clear, precise detail to the master, right? To Sharabindo, she's sort of recounting it, and he makes this observation. Is so I'll have to tell two things that two observations that he makes. So one, in response to this letter, he says this is a Vedic experience, though people currently will not recognize it to be so. Says it's a Vedic experience. That now remember the physical envelope, the physical sheath widening to envelope the earth, right? Now, for those of you again who might think, this is of course, it's fantastical. It's a crazy experience, but there is a link elsewhere. There is a record of this sort of an experience. Now, what is that record? It's in the name Vishwamitra, a friend of the world, right? A friend of existence. This guy intimately knows everything. Everything he knows, Vishwamitra, and he means all of them well. Staggering. Now, in the modern form, in current times, so to speak, relatively, mother is having that experience, and Sri Aurobindo is saying that's a Vedic experience, right? Now, if you go read any of the experiences of the female rishis in the Veda, you will find this similar feminine Shakti principle having its own type of experiences. The males are having one sort of experience, and the female emanations, incarnations, they are having a different type of experience and a very distinct female experience. Very distinct. Not to say that, men will not get those experiences, because there are experiences that the men have where the feminine principle is manifested. It does happen. Because if you look at, for example, I mean, it's a very small example, but still it's a crazy example. Chaitanya, when he was in the mood of Radha, when his identification with Radha was so complete, the people who have seen him, they say that, he used to have almost feminine manners. His body became feminine. So somewhere this thing is sort of malleable, right? No, the mother is having this experience, and Sri Aurobindo is saying, one, it's a Vedic experience. Number one, this is the first thing I would like to mention. And the second thing I'd like to mention is somewhere when Sri Aurobindo is talking about Aditi. Now, this is between mother and Sri Aurobindo, right? He makes this very simple, but uh, I don't know how to say it, right? It's one of like those Upanishadic Mahavakyas, right? Sri Aurobindo is saying, when speaking of Aditi, Aditi is the mother of the gods. There's your Satchidananda level, or God knows, even higher, right? It's above the overmind. She's the one who's sort of spewing out the gods, so to speak, right? Right? And Sri Aurobindo is saying to the mother, just three words: you are she. That's it. You are she.
Kalisti, sorry that so you mean basically it is about the persona itself. It's not a symbolic mother or anything. It's about the mother.
Yeah,
That's it, right?
that's
The
it.
person who lived and died.
Yes.
Okay, so can you go to the next answer?
Can you help me with the
So
question, sir?
yes, so the
I
second
forgot.
question, I mean, you can skip it because to me it sounds it's like obviously a million years from now sounds like heaven and okay, fine. I mean, fine, I understand. So you can even skip it. The third question for me was, is there anything more about Sri Aurobindo than his personality that I need to focus on? Thank you.
It depends on what you want from Sri Aurobindo, sir. So, that's how I would answer it, right? As in what you are ready for. Are you ready for, like Satprem says, the grand adventure? You know, a spiritual path? Are you ready for that path? Or are you merely intellectually, academically curious? So if it's the latter, you have all his books,
No, I'm intellectually curious. So yeah,
this
that's a good
this
answer. Thank you very much for
yeah,
your
yeah,
attention. Thank you.
yeah. No problem, sir. Welcome.
Great. Thanks a lot, Madhur. Over to Raj. Raj, you've been in and out of the room. Would love to hear your thoughts and if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Hemant ji. So, as Nader ji was rightly pointing out, um, there is a quote from Socrates, which I'm paraphrasing, which is like the very lowest kind of discussions are about people. The mediocre kind of discussions are about events, and the higher kind of discussions are about ideas. And we know wisdom is freedom from ideas and concepts. So, all we have been hearing here is discussion about people and discussion about events. So, we have to start discussing about the ideas of Sri Aurobindo so that we could use those ideas and get ourselves free from the ideas. So, if any of you, maybe Kalis, could refrain from himself talking about the personality of Arbindoji and express briefly, succinctly, the ideas of Arbindoji in words less than like 20 words, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'll so in the interest of directness, then I'm the wrong person, right? I'm a bhakta at heart, and I will remain a bhakta at heart. I'm my Lord's servitor. I'm the master's slave boy. So then I'm the wrong person. If you want brief, succinct answers, because what if you want brief, succinct answers, I'll point you to a book, probably. But if you want answers based on experience, all the mistakes I've done, things that we have undergone, how, whatever few steps that we have taken towards Savitri and Sri Aurobindo and how it happened, what's likely to help. If you want the lived experience, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here to give. Now, whether I do it in 1 word or 100 words, I don't know. Much of the times, I don't even know, what I'm going to speak because it comes and I answer. So, it's the swabhava, right? It's my swabhava. Whatever I say is going to be intermixed with Sri Aurobindo. So I'll have to apologize upfront for it, right? So I am what I am until he changes me again, perhaps, then my style might change. But as of now, it is what it is, sir. So I'll have to apologize for that. Uh, and
I
and even
don't yeah.
and even on the ideas front, right? uh, I mean, the notion of discussing ideas. Now, what will you do with discussing ideas? Will it help you? If it's going to help you attain an experience, again, experiential, right? One of the things that I want to emphasize is you have not had the experience. I mean, at least like Motherji said, right? Yeah, very candidly, honestly, he said he's only intellectually curious, done, good, clear, right? Now, if we are discussing the idea for the sake of discussing the idea, then I'm not the right person because I'll get bored. Because unless it leads something, it throws additional light on my sadhana, on my practice, and or it's going to help somebody, it bores me, right? I'm not here for that, right? So apologies, but that's what I am.
But Maheshji, I don't think apologies are needed. I beg to disagree with Raj and his assessment that today's session has been talk about personalities and events. There have been references to personalities and events, with the backdrop being a journey into Savitri, the poem, which perhaps I think Rajji missed that part of the room. We started off with that. And it's all experiences and it's lived experience that Mahesh, you are sharing. So in that, it touches everything. It touches ideas, it touches events, it touches personalities as well. Yeah, not sure phrasing it as just talk about personalities and events was entirely accurate. That's, I would say, missing the trees for the wood or whatever the phrase is, because there was much more than those that were actually covered in today's entire discussion.
Yeah. Okay, Hemanji. So let's begin again. So, what is the essence of Savitri? I would like to hear from you.
Okay, Raj, what I would do is last week we had a session on that. The recording is available, and I will share the link with you. And that will give you a very comprehensive overview of what Savitri, the legend, and the symbol
Uh,
is all about.
yeah, yeah, Hemanji. But is it not possible that you could share right now with me the essence of Savitri in less than 50 words?
So here's the thing, right? This whole room has been about that, okay? And you have missed it, and you're asking for a
So,
recap. I'm
no,
gonna offer you. I'm gonna offer you the full thing, right? If you are genuinely interested in knowing about Savitri, then there is a very beautiful room we had last week and
no,
today
I
also.
want to
The
know
first
the
one.
essence. Can you give me the essence?
What did you gather from today's discussion so far? Let me ask you.
Manji,
Yeah.
just give me the essence. What is the problem in that?
But there is no problem in that. The thing is, my only thing is,
Do you have the essence of Savitri?
yes, I do.
Give it to me.
It
Thank
has,
you.
it has, it has been discussed, and
It
I'm going
has
to
been
offer you the full
discussed,
thing.
but I don't
Yes.
want the full thing. I want the essence.
Okay. But why are you being so disruptive to the flow of this?
No,
I don't
I'm
understand.
just being straightforward and simple.
Hmm.
Like we read a lot of
Hemanji,
things. That
can I take a
Deepji,
minute?
let
Can
me
I?
complete. Let me
No, no,
complete,
see,
Deepji.
see, I don't want this to kind of go out of control. I just want to kind of deal with it here.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
Hemanji, let me complete my sentence.
Yeah.
I'm not being disruptive.
Hmm.
There is a elaborate labyrinth of things, but if somebody could conduct it and give it to the point, that would be
Yeah.
very helpful. So
Okay.
it would be
So.
very helpful to all of us
Hmm.
if you could give essence of Savitri in as brief as possible. Maybe as brief as possible. Maybe you could take not 50. I told you 50 words. Maybe you take 100 words, 500 words. But why don't you tell us? Is it? Would you please be kind enough to tell us?
Okay. Sure. Mahesh, would you do the honors?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Savitri is the journey of of a power of the divine word, Savitri, trying to rescue the human soul from the grip of ignorance and death. Symbolized here as Satyavan. So it's a symbol journey that's undertaken, spiritual journey that's undertaken, and the entirety of the poem records all the states of consciousness, all the aspects, of the human condition, the sadhana that has to be undertaken, uh, and the challenges that one would face, description of the powers that aid, the description of powers that oppose, and how they may be overcome to lead the soul to the divine. So,
Beautiful. Thanks for doing that again, Mahesh.
no problem.
Yeah. So what does it lead us to the divine, which Savitri is saying?
I didn't get the question, please.
You spoke about so many things which the Savitri said, and you said there is something which leads us to the divine. I'm
No,
asking you what leads us to the divine, which Savitri is saying.
it's Savitri herself. She is a personification of the divine word, the Vak, the inspired word, the mantra that's issued from the sun, from the spiritual sun, Savitr, and it is she or her power or herself who comes and saves.
Okay, so what I understand from you is Savitri herself will lead me to the divine, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what is Savitri? How am I to follow her guidance?
Read Savitri with aspiration. That's the sadhana. Read it, wait for it, aspire, things will happen.
Thanks, Mahesh. Shall we move on to Aparajitri? Welcome.
जी, नमस्कार। मैं
Namaskar.
अपनी भाषाई सामर्थ्य के कारण हिंदी में प्रश्न पूछूंगा इफ इट इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम फॉर कलेश जी और हेमंत जी।
Sir, my knowledge,
I have no.
my, no-
Yeah.
my knowledge of Hindi is rather limited, sir. So you can
जी
try
जी,
to
I'll
speak.
translate. I'll translate the question
या
Yeah,
to
प्लीज डू।
English.
yeah.
या
Yeah.
छोटा सा प्रश्न है। अरविंद देवी और देवताओं की बात करते हैं बहुधा, और देवी और देवताओं को समझने के लिए मैं ये जानना चाह रहा था आपसे कि जब अरविंद देवी और देवताओं की बात करते हैं, सरस्वती यहाँ खड़ी हैं, गणेश ऐसे हैं और समथिंग लाइक दैट, तो ये जो एक फॉर्मेट हमारे दिमाग में आता है देवी देवताओं का, कि धोती पहनने हुए एक पर्टिकुलर शेप का एक व्यक्ति जो मुकुट लगाए हुए है, से जो अरविंद का कॉन्सेप्ट है ना, हम वो कितना अलग है या हम उसको किस तरह बेहतर समझें। साथ में ये भी कि क्या ये कॉन्सेप्ट देवी और देवता एक शक्तियां हैं, मान लीजिए अगर हम सिंबल भी मानते हैं कि उनको एक फॉर्मेट हमने दिया जो बहुत पहले का है, तो देवी देवता न सिर्फ बहुत पुरानी अवधारणाएं हैं, शक्तियां हैं, बल्कि बहुत बाद तक चलने वाली भी चीज है, शायद शाश्वत चीज है। तो क्या समय के साथ, है ना, उनको समझने की के लिए कुछ नई डेफिनेशंस की भी जरूरत है क्या, और नए मेटाफर्स की भी जरूरत है क्या, नए सिंबल्स की भी जरूरत है? जी हेमंत जी और कली।
So, Mahesh, do you need? Did you understand that, or do you need help?
No. I think
Um,
I got that, Hemant. I think I got that. If I'm not covering some of the aspects of the question, please let me know. I'll address it. Okay. So when Sri Aurobindo speaks of the deities, the various devas and devis, male principle, the feminine principles, uh, they are not as abstractions. They are living realities, like he mentions in the beginning of Savitri. These are all living realities. In fact, there is a famous aphorism where Sri Aurobindo is aspiring to all the individual gods. He says, be bright in me, O Indra. He says, be voluptuous in me, O Bhaga. So he gives, for each deity's power, he's praying to that. He says, be all of these, right? And then he ends it by saying, let me not be subject to all these gods, O Kali. So, so, so there's one aspect. The thing is, I know that the Hindu tradition represents many of these powers in very specific ways, and it might seem, old-fashioned, new-fashioned, whatever. But I'd like to make a particular point, and the point is this: the Puranas come at a specific point in time, right? So you had the Veda predating, and the way the Veda looks at Vishnu is significantly different, right? Though the principle is the same, it's the same principle the Purana is speaking of. But the Purana imagines Vishnu, or it embellishes Vishnu with a very specific, very different sort of look and feel, right, from what is portrayed in the Veda. Now, it's not a question of right and wrong, but it's what the Puranic rishis felt, saw, were moved by, and that's the form that they are giving. Now, will there be a modern representation of Vishnu in this manner? Will depend on the current set of seers, right? The current set, people like you and me, perhaps, who have that experience of Vishnu and represent him in that manner. Because when the consciousness of Vishnu comes and hits you, though it comes with some of the peaks, right? The peaks of aspiration of the Vaishnavite, the tremendous Vaishnavite movement, right? It is so deeply embedded in human consciousness. It's so deeply embedded that you can't escape it, right? You can't escape it because when something of Vishnu's light comes and strikes you, it comes with that very strong, all the Vaishnavite symbols. It comes, but it's not limited by it, because you also find that he adapts the symbol to your swabhava. He's doing it. So the question is, are there fit enough souls who are calling down Vishnu to come in this modern day and age and then see how he's revealing himself? So it's not a question of our choice, right? It's how the big boy, or rather the big man, wants to reveal himself to you and me. And it's from us that the new set of symbolism is going to come, right? It's from us, because the way I relate to Vishnu is probably very, very different from how, let's say, someone like Andal relates to Vishnu, right? But eventually it's Vishnu. So I think rather than, it's at least my preference, rather than us wanting to clothe Krishna in a modern costume, uh, let him reveal himself, right? We'll see what his preference is, right? Sri Aurobindo, very in a humorous way, responds to a disciple that the disciple gets a dream with Krishna driving a car or something like that, and the guy distrusts the dream experience, and Sri Aurobindo responds saying, "Why not? Why can't Krishna drive a cycle if he wants to? Right? It's Krishna; he can do whatever the hell he wants, right? What matters is, was it Krishna who came, right?" So once we have that experience, then we will see, right, what experience he gives us. If he wants to come as the cowherd boy, you know, so be it. We are not going to argue on Krishna's fashion sense or whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as he comes, it's fine, right? Similarly, the the deities, right, the way they are portrayed, they are the fruit of a certain tradition, a certain curve of giant souls, and tremendous souls who have sort of seen this and who have documented their experience in the Puranas or whatever other works, right? They have done this as their contribution to the human heritage, right? And the question now is, uh, are we uh, fit enough, strong enough to endure that journey and see Vishnu in the form of Rama or Krishna or let's say the Egyptian deities or the Greek deities, right? To see any of these forms and portray them in a modern representation. And I think with especially with a small detour with tools like Midjourney, it becomes very much possible that even if you don't have the artistic ability, if you see Vishnu in a very specific manner, you could represent it. It makes it a little easy. So anyway, that's my answer. I hope I answered the question, sir.
Thanks a lot, Mahesh, for your time and beautifully walking through the opening, the book of beginnings, and the opening few lines of Savitri. Um, we've been going on for 3 hours, and before we close, I would like to read one of your poems, Mahesh.
Sure, sure, boss.
This I got reminded while you were talking about when you're reading the lines from Savitri.
Yeah,
So I this is one of my favorite sonnets of yours. This birth, you say in this birth, how many elements in my memory, born in bone, remembrance of stone, in flesh or imprints of soil and clay, and my mind bears a seal of the moon. All my endings and the many births have led from animal to human bud. A patient sun now doth disclose a secret part greater than the clod. A petal here, a petal there unclose, a savor and fragrance yet unknown, midwifed by 100 powers, a pristine child is upheld to the sun. To thee, O mother, I submit this birth. May all its becomings bear thy word. Just that visual of midwifed by 100 powers, a pristine child is upheld to the sun. So beautiful, Mahesh. How did that happen?
Master's inspiration. It's all his inspiration. I absolve myself from any accusation that I have skill. Okay. No, that's his. It's all Master's.
No, your experience of language happening to you, the way you described, is no less than what happened to Kalidasa. You know, in that flash, he was, leapfrogged from where he was into that world of language,
Yep. Yeah.
where he could produce what he produced. Hearing your experience was, beautiful. So I think we can conclude today's room. I think it's been beautiful. Thanks a lot for all the questions, and to you, Mahesh, for patiently answering them all.
No problem,
And
boss.
we look forward to taking this further next week. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks everybody for your patience and thanks for your questions. So if you have specific
Thank you,
aspects that
Mahesh.
you would want us to cover, we'll do it. Thank you.
Sure. Great. Thanks a lot. On count of three, I'm going to
Yeah, Hemantji,
close the room.
thank you very much, Mahesh, for a beautiful conversation today. And
Welcome, sir.
I would like to know where can I find your sonnets in
I
Twitter?
will I will share the link, Jataveda ji. He
Yes,
has
Hemantji. Thank you.
a blog. I will share
Thank
the
you.
link. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Good night, all,
Good night, all.
and good night.